Sophia's hand froze mid-pour. The coffee stopped. The silence stretched. Her eyes locked on the silver ring on the stranger's finger, the exact same ring her mother had hidden in a shoebox under her bed for 25 years, and told Sophia with tears in her eyes and a trembling voice, "If anyone ever comes asking about this ring, you run. You don't talk. You run." But Sophia didn't run. She looked straight at the most dangerous man in New York and said 7 words that changed both their lives forever. If this story already has your heart racing, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and let's see how far this story travels. Now let's go. The night Adrian Moretti walked into Carmela's Italian kitchen, it was 1:47 in the morning, and the city outside was doing what it always did, bleeding quietly into the dark. He didn't call ahead. He didn't bring Marcus. He didn't bring anyone. That was unusual enough that his driver hesitated at the curb, watching the boss step out of the black car alone. His collar turned up against the November cold, his hands buried in the pockets of a coat that cost more than most people made in 3 months. "Sir," the driver started. Adrian didn't turn around. "Go home, Vincent." "But sir." "I said go home." The car stayed parked for exactly 40 seconds after the restaurant door closed behind him. Then it pulled away. Adrian stood just inside the entrance and let the warmth hit him. It wasn't much old radiator, the kind that smelled faintly of pipe rust and tomato sauce. But it was real. It was the kind of warmth that didn't ask anything from him. It didn't want favors. It didn't want silence money. It didn't want a signature on a document that would ruin someone's life. It just existed. He stood there breathing it in for a moment longer than was necessary for a man who prided himself on never wasting a second. The restaurant was nearly empty. 2 elderly men at the counter, arguing about baseball in low, comfortable voices. A young couple in the booth by the window, who had clearly run out of things to say to each other an hour ago, and were now staring at separate phones. A heavy-set man in a booth near the back, working through a plate of pasta, with the focused dedication of someone who had nowhere else to be. Nobody looked up when Adrian walked in. That was exactly why he came here. He chose the corner booth, back to the wall, eyes on every exit. 20 years of running an empire didn't let you stop doing certain things, even when you were just a tired man who wanted black coffee and 45 minutes of quiet. He settled in, unbuttoned his coat, and closed his eyes for just a moment. In that moment, behind his eyelids, he saw his father's face. Dominic Moretti, dead 20 years. Adrian opened his eyes. He picked up the laminated menu, even though he already knew what he wanted, because holding something gave his hands something to do besides clench. That was when he heard her. Not her words first. Her footsteps. A particular kind of tired, the shuffle step of someone who had been on her feet since before the sun came up and was still going because the bills didn't stop coming just because her body wanted to quit. He had heard that sound his whole childhood. His mother had walked like that. Before everything went wrong. He looked up. She was young, mid-20s maybe. Dark hair pulled back in a way that suggested it had started the shift neat and was slowly losing the argument with gravity. Her uniform was clean, but her eyes were tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep and everything to do with carrying weight that didn't show on the outside. She held a coffee pot with the practiced ease of someone who had refilled 10,000 cups and expected this to be no different. "Coffee?" she asked. Her voice was steady, professional, no nonsense. He liked that immediately. "Black," he said. "No sugar." "You got it." She poured without ceremony, and Adrian watched the steam rise from the cup and thought about nothing, which was the closest thing to peace he ever got anymore. He should have looked away. He didn't, because right at the moment, she set the pot back and turned to go. The light above the booth caught something on her wrist. No, not her wrist. Her eyes. She had stopped moving. She was staring at his hand. Adrian noticed it the way he noticed everything, with the calm, precise attention of a man who had survived 20 years in a business where not noticing things got people killed. He didn't move. He just watched her watch him. Her eyes were fixed on the ring, the silver ring on the 4th finger of his right hand. The one with the old Moretti family crest, two crossed daggers beneath a crown of laurel, worn smooth on the edges from 2 decades of being touched, gripped, turned in moments of grief and rage and loneliness, so complete it had become a physical thing. He had worn it since the day they buried his father. He wore it because it was the last thing that connected him to the man he used to be before the empire swallowed him whole. He wore it because only 3 of those rings had ever existed, and the other 2 were gone. The waitress made a small sound. Not a word. Not a gasp exactly. More like the sound a person makes when they see something that shouldn't exist. Adrian set down the menu. Something wrong? She blinked. She pulled herself back like someone yanking their hand from a flame. No, she said quickly. Sorry, I'm sorry. Can I get you something to eat? But her voice had changed. It had gone from professional to careful in the space of 3 seconds, and Adrian Moretti had not survived 20 years in this city by failing to notice when someone became careful around him. What were you looking at? He asked. Nothing. You were looking at my hand. I wasn't. You were. She met his eyes then, and he saw it, the war behind hers. The calculation. The fear pulling in one direction and something else pulling in another. Something that looked almost like recognition. It's a nice ring, she said finally. That's all. Adrian looked down at it, then back at her. It's 40 years old, he said. Not many people would call it nice. She said nothing. What's your name? She hesitated. Sophia. Sophia. He said it like he was reading it somewhere important. Sophia, you looked at this ring like you've seen it before. The color in her face shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. I haven't, she said. You're lying. She opened her mouth, closed it. And then something happened that Adrian Moretti had not experienced in longer than he could remember. Someone surprised him. Because Sophia Bennett, tired waitress, double-shift survivor woman with medical bills stacked on her kitchen counter and $6 in her personal checking account, looked him dead in the eyes and said something that stopped the world. My mother has a ring exactly like yours. The coffee cup was halfway to his lips. It stayed there. His lungs forgot what they were doing. For a full 3 seconds, Adrian Moretti, the man who had sat across from federal prosecutors without blinking, the man who had negotiated with people who ate other people's fear for breakfast, the man who had not shown a single crack in his composure in 2 decades, sat completely still. Then very carefully he set the cup back down. What did you just say? Sophia's face told him she already regretted it. Her jaw tightened. Nothing. Forget it. I misspoke. You didn't misspeak, sir. Tell me about the ring. I don't want any trouble, she said quietly. I'm not trouble, he said. And he said it in the voice he almost never used anymore. Not the cold, controlled voice of Adrian Moretti the boss, but something older. Something that belonged to a 19-year-old boy who had stood at his father's grave in the rain and made a promise he still didn't know how to keep. Sophia heard the difference. He could tell by the way her shoulders moved. I was just saying it looks similar, she said. Probably a coincidence. There are no coincidences with this ring, Adrian said. 3 were made. 1 belonged to my father. 1 disappeared. 1 was supposed to have been destroyed. Sophia's face did something complicated. I have to get back to work, she said. Sophia. She stopped. Not because of the way he said her name, because of what he said next. If your mother has that ring, she's in danger. The silence that followed had weight to it. Sophia turned back slowly. What do you mean, danger? I mean people have been looking for that ring for 25 years. People who don't knock. People who don't leave witnesses. He kept his voice flat, factual. Where does your mother live? I'm not telling you that. Then you're going to have to trust me. I don't know you. No, he agreed. You don't. He reached into his coat pocket and placed a business card on the table. No name, no title, just a phone number. If anything unusual happens in the next 48 hours, he said, call that number, day or night. Sophia looked at the card like it might bite her. Why would you? She stopped, started again. Why do you care? Adrian looked at the ring. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he said quietly, so quietly that the two old men at the counter couldn't have heard him from 10 feet away. Because that ring belonged to my brother. He left $40 on the table for a $4 coffee and walked out into the November dark. Sophia stood at the window and watched the car she hadn't seen arrive materialize out of nowhere and take him away. She stood there for a long time after the taillights disappeared. Then she went to the back, pulled her phone from her apron pocket, and called her mother. It rang 4 times. 5. 6. Her mother picked up on the 7th ring, voice blurry with sleep, and something else, the slow fog that had been thickening over Elena Bennett's mind for the past 2 years, stealing her words, stealing her dates, stealing the careful walls she had built around the one secret she had kept for a quarter century. "Mom," Sophia said. "Are you okay?" "Sophia?" Her mother sounded confused. "What time is it?" "Almost 2. I'm still at work. Mom." She stopped, pressed her free hand flat against the wall, breathed. "Mom, where is the ring? Where do you keep it?" Silence on the other end. Then with a clarity that cut straight through the fog. "Why are you asking about the ring?" Sophia." Her mother's voice had changed completely. Whatever sleep had been in it was gone. "What happened? Who have you been talking to?" "Nobody. Mom, calm down. I told you never to ask about the ring." "I know. I told you never." "I know, Mom, I know. A man came into the restaurant tonight." The sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line made Sophia stop talking immediately. "What man?" Elena's voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know. He was wearing a ring, Mom. A silver ring. The same one you have. Exactly the same. I've never seen anything like it on anyone else, and—" "Lock the door." "What?" "Lock the restaurant door. Don't go outside alone. I need you to listen to me very carefully." Elena's voice was shaking now, but the shaking wasn't fear. It was the specific trembling of someone who has been waiting for something terrible for 25 years and has just heard it knock. "You need to come home, right now. Don't take the usual route. Don't stop anywhere." "Mom, you're scaring me." "Good," Elena said. "You should be scared, and then you should move." Sophia left the restaurant at 2:15. She told Rosario, the night manager, that her mother was sick. Rosario, who had seen 3 of Sophia's double shifts in the past 2 weeks and knew the circles under her eyes had circles of their own, didn't argue. "Go," he said. "I'll cover the last hour." She stepped out into the cold. The street was mostly quiet, the particular quiet of a city that never fully sleeps, but sometimes blinks. She pulled her coat tight and started walking fast. She made it half a block before she felt it. The specific sensation of being watched. She kept walking. She didn't look back. 2 years ago, her college roommate had told her that the worst thing you could do when you thought someone was following you was to run, because running confirmed that you had something to run from. Sophia didn't run. She turned left at the corner instead of right the way she always went, then left again. She stopped in front of a dry cleaner's, its window dark, and pretended to check her phone while she used the reflection in the glass to look at the street behind her. 2 men. Dark coats. Moving the way people moved when they were trying not to look like they were moving toward something. Sophia's mouth went dry. She called the number on the business card. It rang once. "Where are you?" said the voice on the other end. Not hello. Not who is this. Just where are you? As if he had been waiting. "How did you know it was me?" she whispered. "I only gave that number to one person tonight," Adrian said. "Talk. Where are you?" 2 blocks from the restaurant. There are 2 men behind me." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "How do I know you're not the one who sent them?" A pause. Then, "Because if I had sent them, you wouldn't have had time to make this call." It was the most terrifying reassurance she had ever received. And somehow it worked. She told him the street name. "Don't stop walking," he said. "Don't turn around. Keep talking to me." "I don't know what to say." "Tell me about your mother." What? Tell me about her. It keeps you from freezing. So Sophia walked through the cold November dark with two men behind her and a dangerous stranger in her ear, and she talked about her mother. About how Elena Bennett had shown up in this neighborhood 25 years ago, with nothing but a suitcase and a 6-month-old baby, and a smile that hid everything. About how she had worked 2 jobs for 15 years without complaining. About how she had put Sophia through school by sheer force of will and sacrifice. About how she had started forgetting things 2 years ago, small things first, then bigger things, then sometimes Sophia's name. About how she kept one thing safe through all of it. A ring in a shoebox. And she had made Sophia promise when Sophia was 7 years old, and old enough to hold a promise that if anyone ever came asking about that ring, they were not to be trusted. Anyone, Adrian said quietly. Anyone, Sophia repeated. She was right, he said. Including me. Sophia almost stopped walking. Then why should I trust you now? You shouldn't, he said. Not yet. She heard an engine. A car pulled alongside her, black, the same one she had watched drive away from the restaurant 40 minutes ago, and the back door opened from the inside. Adrian Moretti leaned forward from the darkness. Get in, he said. Your mother's not answering her phone. The house where Elena Bennett lived was a narrow 2-story on a street that had seen better decades. The front door was unlocked. That was wrong. Elena Bennett locked every door and window of her house every single night before 9 p.m. because old habits from a life Sophia didn't know about didn't disappear just because 25 years had passed. Sophia was out of the car before it fully stopped. Adrian was 2 steps behind her. She pushed through the front door, calling her mother's name, and the wrongness hit her immediately. Not the wrongness of violence, not that, but the wrongness of disorder. A knocked-over chair. A lamp at an angle. The small table by the door where Elena kept her keys tilted against the wall. Mom. Here. The voice came from the kitchen. Elena Bennett was on the floor behind the island counter, her back against the cabinets, her knees pulled to her chest. She was 64 years old and in the fluorescent kitchen light. She looked older, not in years, but in the particular way of someone who has just survived something. In her right hand, held so tightly her knuckles had gone white, was a small silver ring. Sophia dropped to her knees beside her. Mom, are you hurt? Did someone? I heard them at the back door, Elena said. Her voice was calm with the eerie calm of shock. I didn't open it. I came in here. I locked the kitchen door. The back door. They're gone, Adrian said from the doorway. He had moved through the rest of the house in the time it took Sophia to cross the kitchen. Quietly. Efficiently. The way someone moved when they had done it before. Both exits. Nobody's here. Elena looked past Sophia. She looked at Adrian. And something moved across her face that was not fear exactly. It was recognition. The terrible, unavoidable recognition of someone who has spent 2 decades preparing for a face she never wanted to see. You look just like him, Elena said softly. Adrian went absolutely still. Like who? Sophia asked. But Adrian wasn't looking at Sophia. He was looking at the ring in Elena's hand. He crossed the kitchen in 4 steps and crouched down in front of the older woman, and the expression on his face was one that Sophia had never seen on a person before, a kind of desperate, unguarded 20 years in the making need that had nothing to do with power. Mrs. Bennett, he said quietly, where did you get that ring? Elena looked at him for a long time. Then she slowly opened her hand and held it out. The ring sat in her palm, twin to the one on Adrian's finger, same crest, same weight, same 40 years of meaning. Your brother gave it to me, Elena said. The night he saved my life. The silence in that kitchen was the loudest thing Sophia had ever heard. Adrian reached out and touched the ring with one finger, just the edge of it, like it was something that might disappear. Daniel, he said. Not a question. A name said by someone who had been carrying it like a wound for 20 years. Daniel, Elena agreed. Adrian closed his eyes, and Sophia, watching the most dangerous man she had ever met, press his hand over his face and breathe like someone surfacing from deep water. understood that whatever she had stumbled into tonight, it was older and larger and more human than anything she could have imagined. They stayed in the kitchen. Adrian sat on the floor across from Elena, because that was where she was, and somehow sitting on the floor of a stranger's kitchen felt right for what was happening. Sophia made tea because her hands needed something to do, and because her mother always said tea meant you were going to stay and figure things out. "Tell me what you know," Adrian said. Elena wrapped her hands around her cup. "What do you remember about the year your father died?" she asked. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Everything. Then you remember the months before." "He was sick. He stopped. Elena shook her head. "He was being poisoned," she said. Slowly, carefully, by someone who knew exactly how much to give and when. Sophia felt the air in the room change. Adrian didn't move. "Your brother found out," Elena said. "Daniel came to me because I was the only person in his world who wasn't connected to any of it. I was just a woman he'd met at a friend's party. Someone with no stake in any of it." "How much did he tell you?" Adrian asked. "Enough that I understood why he was afraid," she said. "And Daniel Moretti was not a man who frightened easily." "No," Adrian said quietly. "He wasn't. He came to me 3 nights before your father died. He told me he had the proof, documents, names. He told me he was going to take it to people he trusted outside the family people who could make sure it went somewhere it couldn't be buried." Elena's hands tightened around the cup. "He gave me the ring that night. He said it was the 3rd one that your father had made 3-1 for himself and 1 for each of you, and that his was the one that was going to prove what he knew, because there was something inscribed on the inside." Adrian's hand moved to the ring on his own finger. He twisted it, looked at Sophia. "I never looked at the inside," he said, quietly, like he was confessing something. "Take it off," Elena said. He did. He held it up in the kitchen light. On the inside of the band, in letters so small they were almost invisible, were 2 things: a date and a name. The date was 6 weeks before Dominic Moretti died. The name was someone Adrian recognized. Someone who had been at every family dinner for the past 25 years. Someone who had sat at his right hand. Someone who had helped him build everything he had spent 2 decades constructing. The color left his face. Not gradually, all at once. "That's not possible," he said. "I'm sorry," Elena said. "That's not—" He stopped. His voice had gone somewhere she couldn't follow. He stared at the name inside the ring, and she watched him understand something that rewrote everything he thought he knew about the past 2 decades of his life. "He was there the night my father died. He was the one who told me it was—" He couldn't finish. Sophia reached over without thinking and put her hand over his. He looked at her hand, then at her face, and for one unguarded moment, Adrian Moretti looked exactly like what he was underneath everything else. A man who had just found out that the person he had trusted most had taken everything from him. "Daniel tried to get the proof out," Elena said softly. "He never made it. They found out he knew. He had just enough time to get me safe before—" She stopped, pressed her lips together. "He told me to take the ring and disappear. He told me if anything ever happened, the ring would explain everything. He told me to keep it until someone came who had the other ring." 25 years, Sophia said. 25 years. Elena agreed. She looked at Adrian. "He said you'd come eventually," she said. "He said you were stubborn enough to keep looking." Adrian looked away. His eyes were bright. He didn't let whatever was behind them go any further than that. "Where is he?" he asked. "Where is Daniel?" Elena set down her tea, and the look she gave him held every year of every difficult, careful, dangerous choice she had ever made. "He's alive," she said. The sound Adrian made was not a word. It was something that had been locked up for 20 years and had just found the door. Sophia looked at her mother, then at the man across the kitchen, then at the 2 rings sitting on the tile between them, one that had never come off a grieving brother's hand, one that had been hidden in a shoebox by a woman who understood that some secrets were larger than one lifetime. She understood now. She understood all of it, her entire life, the narrow house, The constant careful quiet, the locked windows, the mother who never talked about her past, the promise extracted from a 7-year-old girl about a ring she wasn't allowed to ask about, all of it had been the outer edge of this moment. This kitchen, this night, these two people on either side of a truth that had been buried for 25 years. Her mother wasn't hiding from the past. She had been guarding the future, guarding the moment when the right person finally walked through the right door. And the person who walked through it had been guided there by 7 words from a tired waitress who should have kept her mouth shut. Outside the kitchen window, the city moved through its ordinary middle-of-the-night business, indifferent and enormous. Inside, 3 people sat on the floor of a small house and started the very careful, very dangerous work of pulling the truth out of 25 years of dark. Elena looked at her daughter. "Make more tea," she said. And somehow, even in the middle of everything, that was the most grounding thing Sophia had ever heard. She stood up. She filled the kettle. And somewhere across the city, in an office building that stood 60 floors above the street, where Carmela's Italian kitchen served coffee to strangers, a phone rang on a desk belonging to a man who had thought for 25 years that he had buried the only secret that could destroy him. He picked it up. "There's a problem," said the voice on the other end. The man at the desk, old, heavier, settled into the particular comfortable authority of someone who had held power so long. He had forgotten what it felt like to be accountable, leaned back in his chair. "What kind of problem?" he asked. "The waitress," said the voice. "And the old woman." A pause. "And Adrian." Silence from the other end. Which was answer enough. The man at the desk set down his phone. He looked out the window at the city below. 60 floors up, and the streets still looked small. He had spent his whole life making sure he was never small. He wasn't about to stop now. He picked the phone back up. "Handle it," he said. "All 3. He looked at the window. "All 3, he said. And somewhere on the other side of the city, in a small kitchen that smelled like tea, and something older and more complicated than any of them had words for. Elena Bennett looked at Adrian Moretti and said, "We need to move." "I know," he said. "Tonight." "I know." Sophia put the kettle down. She looked at the two of them. She looked at the 2 rings on the floor. And she thought about the 7 words she had said less than 2 hours ago. The 7 words that had rearranged everything. And she understood something she hadn't expected to understand in a restaurant at 2 in the morning. Some sentences don't just start conversations. Some sentences open doors that have been locked for 25 years. And once those doors are open, the only way out is through. She picked up the rings. She handed one to Adrian. She handed one to her mother. "Okay," she said. "Okay," her mother said. Adrian stood. He slid his ring back onto his finger. He looked at Elena. He looked at Sophia. And the man who had walked into a small restaurant looking for silence found himself standing in the middle of the loudest moment of his life. "I need to make a call," he said. He stepped into the hall. Sophia listened to the low murmur of his voice through the wall. Her mother reached over and took her hand. "I'm sorry," Elena said quietly. "For what?" "For the weight I put on you," she said. "All those years, all those locks, all those warnings about the ring." She squeezed Sophia's hand. "You deserved a simpler life." Sophia looked at her mother, at the tiredness in her eyes and the strength underneath it, at the woman who had carried a dead man's secret for a quarter century and never broken. "No," Sophia said. "I think I deserved exactly this one." Elena smiled. For a moment, just a moment, the fog lifted. She was entirely herself, entirely present. Entirely the woman who had walked into this neighborhood 25 years ago with nothing but her courage and her promise and her 6-month-old daughter. "He said you'd be brave," Elena said. "Daniel. He said the girl would be brave." Sophia blinked. "He talked about me. He said if I ever had children, raise them to be brave." Elena touched Sophia's face. "I did my best." In the hall, Adrian's voice went quiet. Then he came back into the kitchen. His face had the look of a man who has made a decision that cannot be unmade. "We're going," he said. Right now, both of you. There are people I trust, and I'm taking you somewhere they can't get to you while I figure out how to handle the rest of this. The man whose name is on the ring, Sophia said. Adrian nodded once. Your uncle, Elena said. The word sat in the room like something with its own weight and gravity. My uncle, Adrian repeated. He said it like someone testing a blade to see if it was real. It was real. Sophia could tell by the way his hands went still. He's been beside me my entire adult life, Adrian said. Every decision, every move. He was the one who... He stopped. He told me Daniel was the one who betrayed our father. He told me Daniel had been the one who... He couldn't finish. He didn't need to. The arithmetic was brutal and simple. The man who had destroyed Adrian's family had then spent 20 years raising the surviving son to be an instrument of his own power. And it had worked. Until a tired waitress at 2 a.m. looked at a silver ring. Okay, Adrian said again. He straightened. The look that settled over his face then was not the look of a grieving man. It was the look of someone who has spent 20 years learning how to be the most dangerous person in the room and has just been handed a reason to use every single bit of it. Let's go, he said. And they went. The car moved through the city without headlights for the first 2 blocks. Adrian's instruction. No explanation given. His driver Vincent, the same man he had sent home an hour ago, now back. Because certain people in Adrian Moretti's life understood that go home meant stand by, executed every turn without being told twice. Sophia sat in the back between her mother and the window. Elena held the ring in her closed fist the way she had in the kitchen, like letting go of it now would undo something important. Her eyes were clear. Clearer than they had been in months actually, which was the strangest part of the night so far. The fog that had been thickening over Elena's mind for 2 years seemed to have retreated in the face of something it recognized as real danger. Like some part of her brain that had been going quiet was suddenly urgently awake. Adrian sat in the front passenger seat and said nothing. Sophia watched the back of his head and tried to understand what she was looking at. 40 minutes ago she had been pouring coffee. Now she was in a bulletproof car with a man whose name made people cross the street fleeing from something she didn't fully understand yet, with her mother pressed against her side, and 2 silver rings between them that apparently held the answer to a 25-year-old murder. Her hands were steady, which surprised her. Her mother used to say that the body knew things the mind hadn't caught up to yet. That steadiness wasn't always calm. Sometimes it was the body deciding that falling apart was not an option right now, so it simply refused. Sophia figured that was probably what was happening. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere safe, Adrian said. That's not an answer. He turned his head slightly. Not enough to look at her. It's the only answer I have right now that's completely true. Sophia let that sit for a moment. The men who came to our house tonight, she said. Were they your uncles? Yes. How can you be sure? Because they were mine first, he said flatly. I recognize the method. 2-man approach, back entry, clean exit. That's a protocol I wrote 3 years ago. For situations that required discretion. He said the last word like it tasted bad. He's been using my own people. Elena made a small sound. He's been using everything, she said quietly. Adrian didn't respond to that. He didn't need to. The car turned onto a bridge, and for a moment, the city opened up on both sides, all that light and darkness moving together, and then it closed again on the other side, and they were in a different neighborhood. Quieter, older, the kind of streets that didn't make the tourist maps. Vincent pulled up in front of a building that looked from the outside like a storage facility, which was exactly what it was supposed to look like. Inside it was something else entirely. Adrian led them through a reinforced door and into a space that had been converted into something between a safe house and a resident's functional spare, but not cold. A kitchen with actual food in it. 2 bedrooms with real beds. A main room with a long table and chairs, and the kind of lighting that didn't hurt your eyes. 3 men were already there. 2 of them Sophia didn't know. The third one she recognized, because he had been introduced to her in the parking lot of the restaurant once, when she had briefly absurdly thought Adrian might be following her home, and had turned around to confront him. He had been there instead. Marcus Cole. Mid-40s, quiet, in the way that made you feel he was always computing something, with the kind of face that gave nothing away unless he decided to let it. He looked at Adrian when they walked in. "It's confirmed," Marcus said. "Both men from tonight are on the secondary payroll." "Whose authorization?" "Came down the chain. Can't trace it back clean yet, but—" Marcus glanced at Sophia and Elena. He didn't finish the sentence. "Say it," Adrian said. "It had your uncle's signature on the protocol, not literally, but the chain of command puts it at his desk." Marcus kept his voice level with the particular effort of someone delivering news they know will land like a physical blow. "He used your clearance codes to activate them." The room went very still. Adrian stood with his hands at his sides. "He used my codes," he repeated. "Pulled them 6 hours ago, before tonight. He knew she—" Marcus stopped, looked at Sophia, started over. "He knew there was a contact at the restaurant before you got there. Someone tipped him." "Who was in the restaurant tonight?" Adrian asked. "We're checking." "Who was in the restaurant, Marcus?" Marcus looked at his tablet. "The couple by the window are clean. The 2 old men at the counter are regulars. The man in the back booth—" He stopped. "The man in the back booth is a problem." "Name?" "Calls himself Ferraro. He's been on the peripheral list for 2 years. We've never been able to place him definitively, but tonight puts him directly in your uncle's orbit." Marcus set the tablet down. "He was there before you arrived. He saw the whole thing." Sophia felt something cold move through her that had nothing to do with the November air she had brought in on her coat. She had thought it was a coincidence. She had thought she had made a mistake by speaking a careless, exhausted mistake made at 2 in the morning by a woman who should have kept her eyes on the coffee pot. But it wasn't a mistake. Someone had put that man in the restaurant tonight to watch for exactly this. "He knew about the ring," she said. Every head in the room turned toward her. "He knew about the ring," she said again more slowly. "Your uncle. He knew enough to have someone watching for it. Which means he's known about my mother this whole time." "Not necessarily," Marcus said, but his voice didn't have enough conviction behind it. "Then why was a man sitting in a restaurant at 2 in the morning watching a specific customer?" Sophia said. "He wasn't there by accident. I was waiting for someone to recognize the ring." She looked at Adrian. "Your uncle knows the ring exists. He's been waiting for it to surface." Adrian looked at her. "For 25 years, he said slowly. "For 25 years, she agreed. Which means he never stopped being afraid of it." The room absorbed that. Marcus picked his tablet back up. Elena, who had said nothing since they walked in, sat down at the long table and folded her hands in front of her with the deliberate calm of someone who has been sitting with the worst version of this truth for longer than anyone else in the room. "He doesn't know what the ring proves," Elena said. Everyone looked at her. "He knows Daniel had a ring. He knows Daniel gave it to someone before he disappeared, but he doesn't know what's inscribed inside it." She looked at Adrian. "Daniel told me he said the only person who would know to look inside the band was someone who already knew what the rings meant. Someone from the family." Her eyes were steady. "Your uncle doesn't know about the inscription. If he did, he wouldn't have spent 25 years just watching. He would have burned the whole city down looking." A beat of silence. Then Adrian crossed to the table and sat down across from his mother. "Tell me everything," he said. "From the beginning. Everything Daniel told you." "It will take a while. We have time." "You have less time than you think," Elena said, "because there's something I haven't told you yet." The way she said it made Sophia look up from the water she had been pouring herself at the kitchen counter. Marcus set down his tablet again. Adrian didn't move. "Daniel isn't just alive," Elena said. "He's been watching." The sentence landed in the room like a stone into still water. "What do you mean watching?" Adrian asked. "I mean he never fully disappeared." Elena's voice was measured, careful, the voice of someone who had rehearsed this conversation 10,000 times in her head and was finally delivering it. "He couldn't. Not completely. Not when the person who destroyed your family was still standing next to you." She paused. "He's been monitoring your uncle for 15 years. Collecting. building a case that couldn't be buried or bought or made to disappear. Adrian's hands were flat on the table. "He's been in contact with you," Adrian said. Not a question. Elena met his eyes without flinching. "Yes," she said. The sound Adrian made wasn't anger. It wasn't even surprise exactly. It was the sound of something tearing very quietly somewhere behind his sternum. "For how long?" "He reached out again when your uncle started consolidating power inside your organization. 8 years ago." Elena held his gaze. "Daniel was afraid you were becoming what your uncle needed you to be. He wanted to warn you. But every time we got close to finding a way, your uncle moved first. Changed something. Isolated someone. Made it harder." "You could have told me," Adrian said. His voice was flat in a way that was worse than shouting. "How?" Elena asked simply. "How would you have received it? A woman you'd never met telling you that your dead brother was alive and that the man you called family had stolen everything from you." She shook her head. "You would have had me killed. I wouldn't. 5 years ago you had a man killed for less," she said, quietly, without accusation, just fact. "Your uncle made you into something efficient, Adrian, something useful to him. He couldn't have you being careful or sentimental or willing to believe in things you couldn't verify." She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and placed something on the table in front of him. "He made you into a weapon, and he aimed you everywhere except at himself." On the table was a small folded piece of paper. Adrian looked at it without touching it. "What is that?" "Daniel wrote it," Elena said. 6 months ago. He told me if the ring ever surfaced, if the moment ever came, give this to Adrian first, before anything else." Sophia watched Adrian's hand move toward the paper. Stop. Move again. Stop again. She understood it completely. The specific terror of something you have wanted for so long that wanting it has become the whole structure of your life. And now it's in front of you, and reaching for it means everything changes. It means the version of reality you have built your entire adult existence on is not the version that was real. He picked it up. He unfolded it. He read it. Nobody spoke. The two men by the door looked at the wall. Marcus looked at his tablet and didn't see a word on it. Elena folded her hands and waited with the patience of someone who had been waiting for this night for 8 years. Sophia watched Adrian's face. She watched the moment he hit the first sentence, the tiny movement in his jaw. She watched him read through to the end. She watched him fold the paper back up. He held it in both hands for a long moment. Then he set it on the table and pressed one hand flat over it, like he was making sure it stayed real. "He knows where the documents are," Adrian said. "Yes," Elena said, "and he's ready to use them. He's been ready for 3 years. He was waiting for the right moment." Elena looked at him steadily. "He was waiting for you to be ready." "He doesn't know if I'm ready. He knows you walked into a restaurant alone at 2 in the morning without bodyguards," Elena said. "He knows you paid $40 for a $4 coffee and gave a waitress a card and told her she might be in danger." Her voice softened just slightly. "He knows enough." Sophia felt the specific strange vertigo of being talked about in the third person by her mother while sitting 3 feet away, but she didn't interrupt because what was happening in front of her was larger than that awkwardness. What was happening was a man being handed back a piece of himself he thought was gone. It was not a clean or comfortable thing to watch. It was raw and complicated and human, and she couldn't look away. Marcus broke the silence. "We have a larger problem," he said. "Tonight changes the timeline." Adrian looked up. "Ferraro reported back to your uncle within 15 minutes of you leaving the restaurant. That means your uncle knows that you've made contact. He doesn't know with who. He doesn't know what you know, but he knows you're moving on something outside his knowledge. And that alone is enough to make him act." Marcus pulled up something on his tablet and turned it toward Adrian. "He called 2 people in the past hour. One is the city's chief of police. The other is the federal judge who controls the oversight committee for your organization's legitimate operations. He's moving to lock down the exits," Adrian said. "He's doing it fast. Whatever he's planning, he's pulling the trigger tonight." Marcus hesitated. "If he seals those 2 relationships before we move, the documents won't matter. A federal judge controls what gets heard. A police chief controls what gets acted on. He'll bury it before it surfaces. Adrian stood up. He was quiet for 30 seconds that felt like a full minute. Then he looked at Marcus. "Get Daniel on a secure line," he said. Marcus stared at him. "Aye, sir." "You heard me." "You've known," Marcus said slowly. "I suspected," Adrian said. "For about 6 months. I couldn't confirm it. I didn't want to confirm it because confirming it meant starting a war I wasn't sure I was ready to fight." He picked up the folded paper from the table. "I'm ready." Marcus took a breath. Then he nodded and stepped out of the room. Elena looked at Adrian. Something in her face shifted. Not relief exactly, but the specific exhale of someone who has been holding a breath for years. "He'll want to hear your voice," she said. "I know," Adrian said. "He thought you hated him." "He was right," Adrian said. "For 20 years, I thought he was the one who—" He stopped, started again. "I spent a long time hating someone for something he didn't do." "Yes." "That's not easy to—" He stopped again. "No," Elena agreed. "It isn't." Sophia set down her water glass. She looked between the two of them, her mother and the man who had walked into a restaurant 2 hours ago and broken something open. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Adrian looked at her. "You should sleep," he said. "I'm not going to sleep." "Sophia." "I'm the reason you're here," she said. "I'm the one who said something. Which means I'm the one who—" She searched for the right word. "I'm the one who started this. So tell me what you need." He studied her for a moment. "Your mother needs someone to stay with her," he said. "My mother is sitting right here and can speak for herself," Elena said mildly. "You're both going to stay in this building," Adrian said. "You're going to have Marcus's people on the doors all night. In the morning, when I know more about where things stand, we're going to talk about next steps." "And tonight?" Sophia asked. "Tonight I'm going to do something I should have done 6 months ago," he said. He looked at the folded paper in his hand. "I'm going to call my brother." Marcus appeared in his doorway. "Line's ready," he said. Adrian walked toward the door. He stopped at the threshold. He turned back to look at Elena. "Thank you," he said, "for keeping him safe." Elena looked at him with 25 years of held-breath patience in her face. "Thank you," she said, "for finally being ready to hear it." He nodded once. Then he walked through the door, and Marcus closed it behind him. Sophia stood in the middle of the room, with her hands loose at her sides, and her heart beating at a rate she was going to have to address at some point. Elena looked at her daughter. "Sit down," she said. "Your legs are shaking." Sophia looked down. They were. She sat. "Mom," she said, "how long have you been waiting for tonight?" Elena thought about it. 8 years since I knew it was building," she said. 25 years since I understood it was possible." She picked up her tea. "But if you're asking how long I've been hoping, that was from the night Daniel put that ring in my hand and told me to keep it safe." She looked at her daughter over the rim of the cup. "He told me that night that the truth doesn't stay buried forever. He said the only thing that buries the truth for good is if nobody survives to carry it." She set the cup down. "We survived, Sophia. That was always the whole plan." Sophia pressed her hands flat on her knees. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were 7, and then you were 10, and then you were 17, and every time I thought about it, I thought 1 more year. Let her have 1 more year of not knowing." Elena's voice was steady and sad, in the specific way of someone who has made a choice they stand behind, but still carries the weight of it. "You deserve to not know, for as long as possible. And now you're 26, and you already know," Elena said. "And you handled it better than I did the first time." A small smile. "You didn't run." "You told me not to run," Sophia said. "I did," Elena agreed. "But telling someone not to run and watching them actually hold their ground in front of someone like Adrian Moretti are 2 very different things." Her eyes were warm, proud in the quiet way she had always been proud. "Your father would have liked you." Sophia went very still. "My father," she said. Elena looked at her steadily. "Your father is the man currently on the phone in the next room," Elena said. The world stopped, Reorganized. Started again. Sophia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Daniel Moretti, Elena said quietly and completely. He was 28 years old and the bravest man I had ever met, and he disappeared 6 weeks after I found out I was pregnant, and I made him a promise that I would keep you safe until the time came. She reached across the table and took Sophia's hands in both of hers. The time came tonight, baby. In a coffee shop at 2 in the morning because you are your father's daughter, and you cannot help but do the brave thing even when every smart instinct you have tells you to stay quiet. Sophia stared at her mother. Her hands were shaking inside Elena's grip. He doesn't know, Sophia said. He knows, Elena said. He's known since you were born. He just hasn't been able to be close enough to... Her voice caught just once, just for a second. He's been watching from as far away as he could get, while still being close enough to matter. The sound of a low voice came through the wall, Adrian's voice. And then underneath it, another voice, older maybe, rougher. The voice of a man who had spent 25 years making himself invisible. Sophia looked at the wall. She looked at her mother. She stood up. Her legs were still shaking. She didn't sit back down. I need to... She stopped. I don't know what I need. You need a minute, Elena said. He's in the next room. He's been in your life your whole life, Elena said. He can wait 3 minutes while you breathe. Sophia breathed. She counted it in, for 4 hold, for 4 out, for 4 something. She had learned in the worst year of her financial spiral, when she was working 3 jobs and still couldn't cover the medical bills, and breathing was sometimes the only thing she could control. In, hold, out. Her hands stopped shaking. She looked at her mother. Does he know what I look like? Elena's smile this time was something else entirely. He has a photograph, she said. From 2 years ago. You were outside the restaurant end of a shift laughing at something on your phone. She tilted her head. He said you laughed exactly like he did. Sophia pressed her lips together hard. She was not going to cry in a safe house at 3 in the morning before she had even met the man. She wasn't. She breathed again. Okay, she said. Okay, Elena asked. Okay, Sophia said again. Differently this time. With the particular steadiness of someone who has decided that if she survived the past 3 hours, she can survive the next 3 minutes. She walked toward the door. She put her hand on the handle. She stopped. Mom, she said without turning around. Yes. When this is over, when all of this is done, I want you to tell me everything, from the beginning, all of it. I will, Elena said. I promise. Sophia opened the door. The hallway was short. The next door was closed. Through it she could hear both voices clearly now, Adrian's low and controlled the other voice older, carrying something in it she recognized without being able to name yet. She raised her hand to knock. She stopped, because on the other side of the door, Adrian Moretti, the most dangerous man in the city, the man who had built an empire on the ruins of a family. Someone else destroyed was saying in a voice so quiet it barely carried through the wall. I know it wasn't you. I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry it took me this long. And the voice on the other end of the line said something she couldn't hear. And then there was nothing but silence. The specific full silence of 2 brothers bridging 25 years in the space of a breath. Sophia lowered her hand. She stood in the hallway with her back against the wall, and she let them have that. Some moments were not hers to enter. Not yet. She waited. Down the hallway. One of Marcus's men stood by the door with his arms crossed and his eyes on the exit because the city outside was still moving, and Adrian's uncle was still making phone calls, and the night was not even close to being finished. But in this hallway for just a moment, Sophia Bennett, whose name might have been something else entirely, if things had gone differently, stood quietly and let the pieces of her life rearrange themselves into a shape she hadn't known they were capable of making. A father. An uncle who was also a stranger. A truth that was older than she was. And a silver ring that had been waiting in a shoebox under a bed for the moment it would finally be allowed to mean something. She pressed her hand flat against the wall. She felt the building under her palm solid, real, unmoved by any of this. She breathed, and she waited for the door to open. The door opened before Sophia could knock. Adrian stood in the frame and looked at her, and whatever he had expected to find in the hallway, it wasn't this: her back against the wall, her hands at her sides, her face carrying something he didn't have a name for yet, but recognized somewhere older than language. He had been crying. He wasn't now. But the evidence was there, the slightly reddened edge of his eyes, the particular tight control of a man who had allowed himself exactly as much as he could afford, and then locked the rest back down. He looked at her. She looked at him. "She told you," he said. Not a question. "Just now," Sophia said. Adrian leaned against the doorframe and looked at the ceiling for a moment. "He wants to talk to you," he said. Sophia's stomach dropped in a way that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with the specific vertigo of approaching something you have wanted without knowing you wanted it your entire life. "Is he still on the line?" "He said to give you a minute." He said. Adrian stopped. He looked at her again. "He said he'd wait as long as you needed." "He's been waiting 26 years, Sophia said. "Another 5 minutes isn't going to hurt him." Something moved across Adrian's face that might have been the beginning of a smile. "No," he agreed. "It isn't." She walked past him into the room. The secure phone sat on the table. A simple thing. Black handset closed circuit line, the kind of technology that didn't exist as far as the outside world was concerned. Marcus had left the room. Adrian followed her in and stood by the wall far enough to give her space close enough that she wasn't alone with it. She sat down. She looked at the phone. She picked it up. She said hello. Silence on the other end for 1 full second. Then a voice said, "Sophia." And that was all. Just her name. But the way he said it, the weight of 26 years compressed into 3 syllables, the specific quality of a voice that had practiced this word in private for longer than she had been alive, undid something in her chest so completely and so quietly that she had to press her free hand flat on the table just to stay level. "I don't know what to call you," she said. Another pause. "Daniel is fine," he said. "For now. Whatever comes after that, you decide." "Okay." She steadied her voice. "Okay, Daniel." She felt Adrian watching her from the wall. Not intrusively. The way someone watches a door being opened that they never thought they'd see open. "I owe you an explanation," Daniel said. "I owe you more than that, actually. But an explanation first." "My mother explained some of it." "Your mother explained what she could," he said. "There are things she doesn't know. Things I never told her because telling her would have put her in more danger." His voice was controlled. Careful. But underneath the control was something raw and constant, like a frequency she could feel more than hear. "I need you to know that leaving was not what I wanted. I need you to know that." "I know," Sophia said. "You can't know," he said. "Not really, not without the full picture." "Then give me the full picture," a breath on the other end. "When I found out what my uncle was doing to our father," Daniel said. "I went to Adrian first. He was 22. He had just started working alongside my father. He had no idea." A pause. "I should have been more careful about who else I told. Instead, I went to someone I thought I trusted, a man inside the organization who I believed was loyal to my father. He told me I was wrong, that I had misread the evidence, that I should sit on it until I was certain." His voice tightened. "I was my uncle's man. By the time I understood that there were already people looking for me, I had maybe 6 hours. And my mother." "And your mother," he said. "I had known Elena for 4 months. She had no connection to any of it, which was exactly why she was the safest person I knew." Something shifted in his voice. "And I was in love with her. For whatever that's worth to you." Sophia pressed her free hand harder against the table. "It's worth something," she said. "I gave her the ring," Daniel said. "I told her what to do if anyone ever came asking. I told her how to disappear. And then He stopped. "And then I made the worst and only decision I could make, which was to go so that the people looking for me would follow me away from her." "And they did." "For a while," he said. "A long while. My uncle spent 2 years trying to find me. I moved 8 times in 14 months. I burned through every identity I had. By the time I surfaced again, I was someone else completely, and your uncle had successfully convinced my brother that I was the one who had betrayed our father." Sophia looked at Adrian across the room. He wasn't looking at the wall anymore. He was looking at the floor, his jaw tight, taking the words like something physical. "He believed it," Sophia said. "He was 22 and his father had just died, and the only family he had left told him a story that explained everything," Daniel said. "I would have believed it too." Adrian made a sound that was not quite a word. Daniel heard it. "Adrian," he said. "I'm here," Adrian said from across the room. "I don't want an apology," Daniel said. "I told you that already. I need you to hear that I don't want it." "You're going to get one anyway," Adrian said. A long pause. "Yeah," Daniel said. "I figured." Sophia looked between the phone and her uncle and felt the strange tilted experience of being the newest person in a room full of the oldest grief. "The documents," she said, pulling them back to what mattered right now. "Adrian said you have what we need." "I have everything," Daniel said, and his voice shifted from the careful personal register into something harder, more specific. "Financial records going back 22 years. Correspondence between my uncle and the men he used to poison my father, including one man who is currently a sitting federal appeals judge." "That's the judge," Marcus said from the doorway. He had reappeared without anyone noticing, which Sophia was beginning to understand was just a thing Marcus did. He was looking at Adrian. "The same one he called tonight." "He's been compromised for 15 years, Daniel said. "My uncle owns him, which is why we can't go through federal channels without controlling which channels we use first. We have 12 hours at most," Marcus said. "If your uncle successfully gets to the judge before we move anything, Daniel gets buried in procedure. It never sees daylight." "So we move first," Adrian said. "We move first," Daniel confirmed. "The documents," Sophia said. "Where are they?" "Somewhere your uncle has been looking for the better part of 10 years, Daniel said. "And somewhere he will never think to look, because it requires knowing something about our family that he deliberately destroyed all record of." The room waited. "Our grandfather had a property," Daniel said. "Off the books, never registered under the family name. He bought it in 1962 under a name that only my father knew, because my grandfather told him the night before he died. And my father told me and Adrian the night before he stopped. The night before he got sick." Adrian's head came up. "The Calloway property," he said. "The Calloway property," Daniel confirmed. "I thought that was a story," Adrian said. "I thought our grandfather told our father a property. I thought it was a story he told too. I thought it was—" He pulled himself back together. "The documents are there." "Buried under the floor of the back room," Daniel said. "I put them there 7 years ago, when I knew I was close enough to being found that I needed to move them somewhere untouchable." A beat. "I need someone to get there before morning." "I'll go," Adrian said immediately. "Not you," Daniel said. Adrian stopped. "You're the one he's watching most closely right now. If you move toward that property, he will know within the hour, and he will get there first." Daniel's voice was firm. "He cannot know those documents exist until they are already in the hands of someone who can use them. It has to be someone he's not tracking." Every head in the room turned with the slow collective inevitability of a tide toward Sophia. She felt it happen. She looked at Adrian. She looked at Marcus. She picked up the phone. "Tell me exactly where to go," she said. "Sophia," Adrian started. "He said not you," she said without looking at him. "And he's right. Your uncle had men at our house tonight. He has your driver. He probably has half your organization running surveillance. He doesn't have me." She kept the phone against her ear. "I'm a waitress. I'm nobody. And right now that's the most useful thing in this room." Silence from the phone. Then Daniel said quietly, "She really is mine, isn't she?" It wasn't a question. "Tell me where to go," Sophia said again. Daniel told her. The Calloway property was a 40-minute drive from the city, a piece of land that had never been developed, held under a corporation name so old and deliberately obscure that 3 generations of lawyers had never flagged it. The back building, the floor panel in the northeast corner. Underneath a waterproof case. Inside the case, everything. Marcus goes with you, Adrian said when she had ended the call. Marcus is known, she said. Marcus goes with you, Adrian repeated in a voice that was not asking. I'm not sending you out there without someone who can handle whatever happens. She looked at him. He looked back. She understood that this was not negotiable. Fine, she said. Marcus. Marcus was already putting on his coat. Elena appeared in the doorway from the main room. She had been quiet for the past 20 minutes, and Sophia had almost forgotten she was there, which was exactly the kind of thing Elena Bennett was capable of becoming. So still, she was practically furniture until the moment she decided to speak. Be careful, Elena said, looking at her daughter. I will be. I mean it, not brave. Careful. They're not mutually exclusive, Sophia said. Elena pressed her lips together in an expression that was equal parts exasperation and pride. Sophia pulled on her coat. She looked at Adrian. While I'm gone, she said. What are you doing? Managing the situation, he said. What does that mean? It means I'm going to have a conversation with my uncle, he said. The way he said it made the hair on her arms stand up. Not yet, she said. He looked at her. Not until I'm back with the documents, she said. If you confront him before we have them in hand, he'll know we're moving, and he'll disappear everything. Adrian held her gaze. I know, he said. I need you to promise me. Something moved across his face. The particular resistance of a man who had been his own authority for so long that being asked to wait by someone else felt structurally wrong. But he said, I promise. She nodded. She walked out. The drive took 38 minutes. Marcus drove in silence for the first 20, and Sophia used the time to do what she always did when she needed to think clearly. She made lists. Not on paper. In her head. Ordered specific actionable. What she knew. What she needed. What happened if things went wrong. The list of things that could go wrong was longer than she would have liked. You're very calm, Marcus said finally. I'm terrified, she said. But I've been terrified before. Medical bills, he said, not cruelly, just factually. She looked at him sideways. Adrian told you about me, she said. I investigated you, Marcus said. Standard protocol when the boss takes an interest in a civilian. Is that what I am, a civilian? That's what you were 4 hours ago, Marcus said. The classification has since been updated. She almost laughed. What am I now? Marcus glanced at her. You're the boss's niece, he said, and apparently his nephew's daughter, which in this particular organization makes you a very complicated person. Is that good or bad? In my experience, Marcus said, complicated is what keeps people alive. He pulled off the main road onto a dirt track. The night was dark out here, a different kind of dark than the city, thicker, more complete. They drove without headlights for the last quarter mile. Marcus pulled over and cut the engine. Buildings ahead on foot, he said. 200 yards. I go first. If I stop, you stop. If I run, you run the other direction, and you call this number. He pressed a card into her hand. Do not wait for me. What if? Do not wait for me, he said again. She pocketed the card. They got out. The night was cold in a way that had teeth, and the ground was uneven under Sophia's feet. She was still wearing her work shoes, the flat black ones she had put on 16 hours ago at the start of a double shift that had turned into the longest night of her life. Marcus moved ahead. She followed. She counted her breaths. They reached the building without incident, which somehow felt like its own small miracle, given the accumulated weight of the night. Marcus got the lock open in 40 seconds. Inside darkness and the smell of old wood and decades of disuse. Marcus used a small light, kept it low, aimed at the floor. Northeast corner. The floor panel was exactly where Daniel had said it would be. Marcus lifted it. Underneath, set into the dirt, a waterproof case the size of a large shoebox. Sophia reached for it. Her hands were steady. She pulled it out. Got it, she said. And that was when Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face changed. We need to move, he said. Right now. What happened? Adrian's uncle called Adrian, Marcus said. 20 minutes ago. He knows we're outside the city. Sophia stood up with the case in her hands. He's tracking the car, she said. He's tracking the car, Marcus confirmed. He was already moving toward the exit. We have maybe 15 minutes before whoever he's sending gets here. They ran. Sophia ran in flat work shoes across uneven ground in the dark, holding a waterproof case full of documents that could destroy a man who had held power for 25 years, and she thought with a clarity that was almost funny that she had not actually exercised in 4 months because she was always too tired from double shifts to make it to the gym. She made it to the car. Marcus had it running before she closed the door. They pulled out in a different direction than they had come. Marcus drove with the focused, precise efficiency of someone who had done this before taking turns she wouldn't have noticed in daylight navigating by memory through roads that weren't on any public map. Are we going back to the safe house? She asked. Not directly, he said. I'm going to make sure we're clean first. How long? 20 minutes. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it. Adrian, he said. What does he say? Marcus handed her the phone. The text read. He called me. He knows something. He's coming to me. I need to change the plan. Sophia looked at it. She typed back, Do not move yet. We have the documents. 30 minutes. The response came in 10 seconds. He's already here. Sophia's stomach dropped. Marcus, she said. I see it, he said. He had already increased the speed. Talk to Adrian. Keep him on the line. She called. Adrian picked up on the first ring, and in the background, she could hear something that made every nerve in her body go rigid. Voices. Multiple voices. The controlled professional sound of men who were not Adrian's. I'm here, she said. Where are you? His voice was perfectly controlled, which was worse somehow than if it hadn't been. 20 minutes out. Marcus is moving fast. Good. A pause. Then quieter. He brought 4 men with him. He said he's concerned for my safety. He's... A short pause. He's being very friendly. The word friendly in Adrian's voice had the texture of something that should not have been what it was. Adrian, she said. Listen to me. Do not show him anything. Do not tell him anything. Whatever he says, whatever he claims to know, give him nothing until I walk through that door. He's asking about the ring, Adrian said. Sophia's grip on the phone tightened. What do you mean? He knows I saw it. He knows I made contact with someone tonight. He's asking me very calmly and very pleasantly where the ring is. Adrian's voice was perfectly steady. He wants to see it. Buy time, she said. I'm buying time. 20 minutes. Sophia. His voice dropped even lower. He knows about Elena. He used her name. She forced herself to breathe. Elena is safe, she said. She's with your other people. He doesn't know where. He said if I cooperate, she won't be harmed. The threat in that sentence buried under the word cooperate was as clear as anything she had ever heard. He's bluffing, Sophia said. He's trying to get you to move before you're ready. He's done this to you your whole life. He puts something you care about in front of you and makes you react before you think. She kept her voice level. Don't react. Wait for me. Silence. Then, you sound like Daniel. So I've been told, she said. 20 minutes. She handed the phone back to Marcus. Marcus said nothing. The car moved through the dark. 18 minutes later, they pulled up to the safe house from the back. Sophia walked through the door, holding the case. Adrian's man at the interior door looked at the case and immediately got on his radio. 2 minutes after that, Sophia was in a car heading to a building she had not been to before, the main building, the actual place where Adrian conducted business, the one she had not seen until tonight. When she walked in, the room was full. 8 people. 10. A long table. Tension of the specific kind that had been compressed into a small space and was looking for somewhere to go. And at the head of the table, sitting across from a man Sophia had never met, but recognized immediately, The specific recognition of someone who has been described to you in such detail that their face arrives pre-labeled sat Adrian. The uncle. Carmine Moretti, 70 years old. Heavy set. The face of a man who had been comfortable for so long that comfort had become structural. Silver hair. Good suit. The particular ease of someone who believed right up until this moment that he had controlled every piece of this board. He looked at Sophia when she walked in. His eyes went to the case in her hand, and for the first time that night, she watched a powerful man try to rearrange his face and not quite succeed. "Who is this?" he asked. "My niece," Adrian said. The word landed in the room like a dropped stone. Carmine's expression went through three things in rapid succession: confusion, calculation, and then something that was trying very hard to be nothing at all. "You don't have a niece," he said. "I do now," Adrian said. Sophia set the case on the table. She did not break eye contact with Carmine Moretti while she did it. "My name is Sophia," she said. "My father is Daniel Moretti." She opened the case. "And I have everything you've been looking for." Carmine looked at the documents inside the case. He looked at Adrian. He looked at the room full of men who were no longer looking at him the way men looked at someone they worked for. "This is," he started. "Over," Adrian said. "Yes, you don't understand what you're doing," Carmine said. His voice had shifted, not panicked, but recalculating. Still working the angles. Still the man who had played every room he had ever walked into. "Everything I did was for this family. Everything. Your father was weak, Adrian. He was going to lose everything. I saved." "You poisoned him," Adrian said. Flat. Certain. The two words hit the room like a shut door. Carmine went very still. "I was going to hand the organization to men who would have destroyed it," Carmine said. "I gave everything I had to build what we have. I was not going to watch him dismantle it because he had gotten soft in his old age." "He was 47, Adrian said. "He was old in the ways that mattered. He was my father. I was a liability." Carmine leaned forward. "And you know it, Adrian. In your bones you know it. Everything I taught you because I was right. About all of it. You became what this family needed because of me." "I became what you needed," Adrian said. "That's different." The room was absolutely silent. Sophia watched Carmine's jaw tighten. She watched him look at the documents and do the math that powerful men do when they understand for the first time that the math is no longer working in their favor. "The judge," he said. "You can't use federal channels without—" "We're not using the judge," Adrian said. Carmine stopped. "A federal prosecutor out of the Southern District," Adrian said. "Someone my uncle has never had contact with. Someone who has been waiting for exactly this package for 6 months." Sophia looked at Adrian. He hadn't told her that part. He caught her look. "I told you I had suspected for 6 months," he said quietly. She understood. He had been preparing. Quietly, carefully, in parallel with everything else, just in case the moment came, just in case Daniel was right, and the truth was finally close enough to the surface to reach. "You were already moving," she said. "Slowly," he said. "I didn't have the documents. I didn't have enough. But I had the direction." He looked at his uncle. "You taught me to always prepare for the game within the game. You just never thought I'd be playing it against you." Carmine sat back. He looked at his hands. He looked at the table. He looked at the room full of men who were standing very still and very far from his side of the table. "You think this ends cleanly," he said. "You think you expose me and the story is done, and you walk out of this with your hands clean." He looked up. "You've built the same thing I built, Adrian. The same organization, the same methods, the same—" "No," Adrian said. "The blood on your hands is the same." "The blood on my hands is real," Adrian said. "I'm not pretending otherwise, but I didn't put it there by destroying my own family." Carmine was quiet for a moment. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Adrian said, "Marcus walks you out of this building and into a car, and you spend the next several hours in a room with the federal prosecutor I just mentioned." He stood up. "And then whatever happens, happens." "You'll go down with me," Carmine said. Everything I know about your operations. I know, Adrian said. Carmine blinked. I know, Adrian repeated. I've been making arrangements for that too. He picked up the folded piece of paper from his coat pocket. Daniel's letter, and held it for a moment. I'm not walking away from the things I've done, but I'm done letting you use them. He nodded at Marcus. Marcus stepped forward. Carmine looked at Adrian one last time. In that look was something unexpected. Not rage, not calculation, but a kind of baffled, genuine incomprehension. He had built a weapon and aimed it, and the weapon had turned around and looked him in the eye and chosen differently, and he did not understand it at all. He made you soft, Carmine said. Whoever this woman is, she made you soft. She made me honest, Adrian said. There's a difference. Carmine was walked out. The room exhaled. Sophia stood at the table with her hands on the open case and felt the specific strange exhaustion of a body that has been running on adrenaline for 4 hours and has just been told it can stop. She didn't sit down. Not yet. Because Adrian was looking at her from across the table with an expression she hadn't seen on him before. Not the controlled, careful expression of a man managing a situation, but something much simpler and much harder. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me, she said. I started this by opening my mouth when I shouldn't have. You started this by being brave when you didn't have to be, he said. That's different. She thought about what her mother had said. She thought about a man on a phone line 25 years away, saying the word Sophia, like it contained everything he hadn't been able to give her. She thought about a shoebox under a bed and a ring, and a promise made between two people in a moment of crisis that had held for a quarter century. My father, she said. Yes, Adrian said. He's coming in. In the morning, as soon as it's safe. Adrian paused. He wants to... He asked if you would be willing to meet him. In person. Sophia looked at the table. At the documents that had changed everything. At the silver ring on Adrian's finger catching the light. She thought about 7 words said to a stranger at 2 in the morning. She thought about how the smallest true thing spoken in the right moment could unmake 25 years of careful, deliberate darkness. She thought about her mother saying the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Yes, she said. Yes. Tell him yes, she said. Tell him I'll be here. Adrian reached for his phone. He stopped. He already knows, he said quietly. He's been listening. Sophia looked up sharply. Adrian held up the phone. The call was still connected. 47 minutes. She stared at it. Then she reached across the table and picked it up. She heard breathing on the other end. Steady. Careful. The breathing of a man who has been holding himself very still for a very long time. You heard all of that, she said. Yes, Daniel said. Then you know it's done. Almost, he said. Almost, she agreed. A pause. You were incredible, he said, quietly, like the word wasn't large enough and he was offering it anyway because it was what he had. Out there tonight, the building, the case, all of it. Sophia pressed her lips together. She was not going to do this on the phone. She was going to do this in person, face to face, with enough time to actually say the things that needed saying. And she was not going to compress 26 years of questions into a phone call at 4 in the morning. I'll see you in the morning, she said, a breath on the other end. Yeah, he said. You will. She ended the call. She set the phone on the table. She stood in the middle of the room with Adrian Moretti across from her, and the documents between them, and the whole ruined, beautiful, complicated truth of the past. 25 years scattered around her like something broken that was only now showing what it had been trying to become all along. What happens to you? She asked. Adrian looked at his ring. That depends on a lot of things, he said. The federal prosecutor. The federal prosecutor, he agreed. What I give them and what they decide to do with it. He was quiet for a moment. I built a lot of what my uncle built. I used different methods. I told myself different reasons, but the structure is the same. He met her eyes. I'm not walking away clean. Are you walking away at all? He thought about it. Differently, he said finally. I'm walking away differently. That's the most I can promise right now. Sophia nodded. She picked up her coat from the chair where she had dropped it. She was tired in every layer of herself, in her bones and her muscles, and behind her eyes, and in the specific deep exhaustion of the heart that has been pushed hard for a long time. But underneath the exhaustion, something else. Something that felt startlingly, almost inconveniently like hope. I need to go back to my mother, she said. Marcus will take you. And the morning. The morning will be what it is, Adrian said. I've stopped trying to control everything past the next hour. I recommend it. She almost laughed. She actually did laugh just slightly, a small surprised exhale that she hadn't planned and couldn't quite stop. Adrian looked at her when she laughed. He looked at her the way you looked at something that reminded you of something you had forgotten you missed. What? She said. Nothing, he said. Go be with your mother. She went. In the hallway, she passed two of Marcus's men, a closed door and a window that showed the city beginning to think about morning, not light yet, but the particular shift in darkness that meant light was forming an opinion. She stopped at the window. She pressed her hand against the glass. On the other side, the city that had been doing its indifferent nighttime business for the past 4 hours continued doing it, unmoved, enormous, innocent of everything that had happened inside these walls. But something had shifted. She could feel it the way you feel a change in pressure, not visible, not loud, but real. 25 years of a buried truth had just broken the surface, and what it found when it got there, instead of more darkness, was a woman who had decided 6 hours ago not to keep her mouth shut. She pushed off from the window. She walked toward the door. And behind her, in a room at the end of a long corridor, Adrian Moretti sat alone at a table covered in documents and truth and the careful, difficult, necessary work of figuring out what came next. He looked at the ring on his hand. He picked up his phone. He looked at Daniel's name on the screen, stored there for 6 months, under a code name, waiting for the moment he finally had the courage to use it. He pressed call. It rang once. I thought you were going to sleep, Daniel said. I need to ask you something, Adrian said. Ask. When this is over, Adrian said. When all of this is done, do you think we can? He stopped, tried again. Is there enough left to? Yes, Daniel said, before he could finish. Certain and immediate, and carrying 25 years of the same question. Yes, there is. Adrian exhaled. Outside the window, the city moved toward morning, and somewhere in a safe house across town, Elena Bennett sat in a chair with a cup of tea she had stopped drinking 20 minutes ago and looked at the door and waited for her daughter to come home. The ring was on the table in front of her. Both of them side by side. 3 had been made. 2 were here. The third was on a man who had been invisible for 25 years and was, as of tonight, finally allowed to stop. Elena touched the edge of one ring, then the other. She thought about a night 26 years ago when a young man had pressed a ring into her hand and told her that the truth was worth protecting, even when it cost everything. She thought he had been right. She thought he was still right. She wrapped both hands around her cold tea, and she waited for morning, the way she had been waiting for it her entire life, with patience and love, and the absolute unshakable conviction that it was coming. It always came. Even after the longest night. It always came. Morning came the way it always did, after the longest nights. Not gently, not dramatically, just inevitably, the light arriving, whether anyone was ready for it or not. Sophia had not slept. She had tried for about 40 minutes, lying on the narrow bed in the safe house, with her coat still on, and her shoes still on, and her eyes pointed at the ceiling, doing absolutely nothing useful. Her body was exhausted. Her mind had other ideas. It kept running the same loop, the restaurant, the ring, the car, the kitchen floor. Elena's voice saying, Daniel Moretti, like the name was both a wound and a remedy. The phone call, the documents. Carmine's face when he understood the math had stopped working in his favor. She gave up on sleep at 5:40 and went to find her mother. Elena was exactly where Sophia expected her to be, at the small kitchen table, upright awake, with a cup of tea that was still steaming. Like she had been awake for hours, and had simply been sitting with it the way she sat with most things, quietly, completely. You didn't sleep either, Sophia said. I slept a little, Elena said. An hour, maybe 2. Sophia poured herself coffee from the pot someone had made at some point and sat down across from her mother. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was the specific silence of two people who have been through something together and are still in the process of understanding what it was. He's coming this morning, Sophia said. I know. Are you nervous? Elena considered the question with the genuine seriousness she brought to things that deserved it. No, she said finally. I've been having this conversation in my head for 25 years. I think I've run out of nerves for it. She looked at her daughter. Are you? Sophia thought about it. Terrified, she said honestly. Good, Elena said. That means it matters. It shouldn't matter this much, Sophia said. I don't even know him. He's a stranger who happens to share my DNA and apparently watched me from a distance for 26 years, which is either the most loving thing I've ever heard or deeply unsettling, and I can't decide which. Both, Elena said simply. It's both. How do I do this? Elena reached across the table and put her hand over Sophia's. You do it the same way you did everything else last night, she said. You stand there and you tell the truth and you don't run. Sophia looked at her mother's hand over hers. She turned her hand over and held it. You're going to be okay, Elena said. Both of you, all 3 of you. 3, Sophia said. You, Daniel, Adrian. Elena smiled. You found a family last night, baby. It's messy and complicated, and it came wrapped in 25 years of damage. But it's real. Sophia was quiet for a moment. I'm still a waitress, she said. Elena laughed, a real one surprised out of her. The laugh. Sophia had grown up with the one that meant things were going to be all right, even when they were very much not all right yet. Yes, Elena said. You are still a waitress. I have a shift on Thursday. Then you have a shift on Thursday. Sophia looked at the coffee in her cup. She thought about Carmela's Italian kitchen, with its old radiator smell and its laminated menus and its $2 coffee. She thought about Rosario telling her to go home. She thought about the corner booth and the tired man in the expensive coat who had sat down looking for silence and had found something considerably louder. She thought about the ring, how it had caught the light, how her mouth had opened before her brain had finished deciding whether to let it. She thought about how the entire shape of the night of everything had hinged on that one small, reckless moment of honesty. Mom, she said. I'm glad I said something. Elena squeezed her hand once and let go. I know, she said. So am I. The knock at the safe house door came at 7:12 in the morning. Marcus answered it. Sophia heard voices in the hallway, low, controlled the specific register of men being careful with something they didn't want to drop. She stood up. Her legs were steadier than she expected. The door to the kitchen opened, and Daniel Moretti walked in. He was taller than she had imagined, which was strange because she hadn't consciously imagined him at all, and yet the body apparently had its own image ready. 54 years old, lean in the way of a man who had spent decades moving carefully through the world with dark hair going silver at the temples and eyes that were her eyes. The exact shape and color and particular watchfulness of her own eyes looking back at her from a stranger's face. He stopped in the doorway. He looked at her. His face did something that had no name for it, not one word anyway. It was the expression of someone arriving somewhere they have been trying to get to for so long that arrival itself doesn't feel real yet. Sophia, he said. Same as last night on the phone, just her name. But in person, it was different. In person, it had a texture to it, a weight. The full 26 years of it behind a voice that was not a phone voice anymore, but a real one, 3 feet away, attached to a real person who was looking at her with eyes that were hers. Hi, she said. Which was ridiculous. She knew it was ridiculous even as she said it, and Daniel made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and something else entirely, and that broke it open just enough. He took 2 steps forward. He stopped. Can I? He started. Yes, she said before he finished. He put his arms around her. She stood very still for exactly 1 second, the second of the body deciding, and then she held on. He was shaking slightly. She discovered she was too. Elena at the table made no sound at all. Marcus in the doorway suddenly found something very important to look at in the hallway. They stood like that for a long moment. Then Daniel pulled back and held her by the shoulders and looked at her face, the way you looked at something you had been missing so long that finding it felt like a small kind of resurrection. "You look like your mother," he said. "Everyone says that." "And you have my eyes," he said. "I noticed. And apparently my complete inability to keep my mouth shut at the wrong moment," he said. Sophia blinked. Then she laughed genuinely, the surprised kind, the kind that comes up before you can stop it. "Adrian told you that," she said. "He said you walked into a room full of dangerous men carrying a briefcase full of evidence, and opened it on the table and introduced yourself," Daniel said. "He said you didn't blink." "I blinked on the inside," she said. "Extensively." Daniel looked at her. "I'm sorry," he said. "For everything you didn't have. For the things I couldn't give you. For the years I couldn't—" He stopped. Started again. "I'm sorry it took this long." "You kept us safe," Sophia said. "That's not the same as being there." "No," she agreed. "It isn't. But it's not nothing either." He looked at her steadily. "We have time," she said, "to figure out the rest of it." He nodded. "Once." "Yes," he said. "We do." Elena cleared her throat from the table. "Sit down," she said to Daniel. "Both of you, there's coffee." It was the most normal sentence that had been said in the past 8 hours. It was exactly what was needed. They sat. And in the strange, fragile, necessary space of a safe house kitchen at 7 in the morning, with bad coffee, and the smell of old construction, and Marcus's men in the hallway. The three of them began the very slow, very careful, entirely human work of becoming something to each other. They had been at it for 40 minutes when Adrian arrived. He came in without announcement, the way he always moved quietly, efficiently, with the particular ease of a man who had spent his life in rooms that were supposed to belong to other people. He looked different in the morning light. Still the same man, same controlled presence, but something in him had shifted in the hours since Sophia had last seen him. A tightness that had been around his jaw was gone. Or not gone, but loosened. Like a knot that had been pulled so tight for so long that even a partial release changed the shape of the whole thing. He stopped in the kitchen doorway. He looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at him. For a moment nobody moved. Then Adrian said, "You're thinner." Daniel said, "You're grayer." "I've had a stressful 25 years. "So have I." "Whose fault is that?" Genuinely unclear at this point, Daniel said. They looked at each other for another beat. Then Adrian crossed the kitchen and put his hand on the back of his brother's neck, the way you would with someone you had grown up with. Someone whose presence was so old and physical that words weren't the right container for it. Daniel grabbed his arm. Neither of them said anything. Sophia looked at her mother. Elena was looking at the table, giving them privacy, the only way you could in a kitchen this small. And her expression was the expression of someone watching something they had wanted for 25 years finally happen, and finding that the reality of it was even larger than the wanting had been. Adrian let go. He sat down. He put both hands flat on the table and looked at the 2 rings sitting there between the coffee cups, the ones that had been separated for 25 years and were now for the first time in the same room again. "Where's Carmine?" Daniel asked. "Federal custody as of 6 this morning," Adrian said. "The prosecutor moved fast. She's been waiting for this." He paused. "She has enough. Between the documents and the financial records I provided separately, she has more than enough. And the judge. Suspended pending investigation." Adrian's voice was even, clinical almost, the voice of a man reporting facts so he doesn't have to feel them yet. "His relationship with Carmine goes back 15 years. It's going to be a long process." "And you?" Daniel asked. Adrian looked at his hands. This was the question Sophia had asked last night, and he had answered with carefully limited precision. Now in daylight with his brother across the table, the answer had to be more complete. "I gave them a full accounting," he said. Everything I was involved in that was outside the law. Everything. He paused. The prosecutor is working on terms. There will be consequences. I'm not sure of the shape yet, but I went in clean, gave them everything, and she said that counts for something. How much? Daniel asked. Enough that I'm not in a cell this morning, Adrian said. Beyond that, I don't know. Daniel nodded. I have documentation of a dozen things Carmine forced you into, he said. Decisions he manufactured your involvement in to keep you compliant. Things that look voluntary but weren't. I've been building that case for 8 years. He looked at his brother. I'll give it to the prosecutor. Adrian was quiet for a moment. You don't have to do that, he said. I know. It doesn't. I'm not asking you to. I know you're not asking, Daniel said. I'm offering. He held his brother's gaze. You spent 20 years believing I destroyed our family. You had every reason to, and you never stopped trying to find the truth anyway. Even when you thought the truth was going to confirm your worst assumption. That counts for something too. Adrian looked at the table. I almost had you killed, he said. Twice, in the first 10 years, when I still thought, he stopped. I sent men looking for you. I know, Daniel said. I moved a lot in those years. I'm sorry. Adrian. I'm sorry. Daniel looked up at his brother. I know, he said. I know you are. Sophia, who had been sitting very quietly through this, picked up her coffee cup and found it was empty and went to pour more for something to do with her hands, because watching two brothers navigate 25 years of damage in real time was not the kind of thing you could look at directly for too long without it becoming too much. Behind her, Elena said quietly, The organization. What happens to it? I've already started the process of dissolving the parts that can't be made legitimate, Adrian said. The legitimate operations, the construction, the property holdings, the financial services, they can stand independently. They're real businesses. They employ real people. I'm not going to... He stopped. I'm going to do this correctly. It will take time, Daniel said. Yes, Adrian agreed. It will. People will try to fill the space you're leaving, Daniel said. Not as an argument, as a fact, the observation of someone who understood the ecosystem. People will try, Adrian said. That's not my problem to solve by staying in it. He picked up one of the rings from the table, turned it in his fingers. My problem to solve is cleaning up what I built and making sure the people who depended on it aren't destroyed in the process. That could take years, Sophia said from the counter. She hadn't meant to say it. It came out because it was true, and she couldn't let it go unsaid. Adrian looked at her. Yes, he said. It could. Are you prepared for that? No, he said. But I'm going to do it anyway. She looked at him. He looked back. Marcus appeared in the doorway. The prosecutor is asking for a meeting this afternoon, he said. She wants all the documentation consolidated, and she wants a full walkthrough of the Carmine timeline. What time? Adrian asked. 2 o'clock. Set it up. Marcus disappeared. Daniel looked at Adrian. I'll be there, he said. You don't need to be. I have 25 years of documentation, Daniel said. You're going to need me in that room. Adrian opened his mouth, closed it, nodded. Fine, he said. It was a small word for what it actually contained: a brother admitting he needed help. Another brother being willing to give it. The first joint decision two men had made in 25 years. It was a beginning. Sophia set down her coffee cup. Something had been sitting at the back of her mind since 7 this morning, a small, persistent discomfort she hadn't been able to name, and she needed to name it now because it was getting louder. I need to say something, she said. Everyone looked at her. She looked at Adrian. Last night, she said, in the room with Carmine, you said you weren't going to walk away from the things you'd done. She held his gaze. I need to know if you meant that. I meant it, he said. Because the easy version of this, she said, is that Carmine takes the fall for everything and you walk out clean, and the story is that you were a victim of your uncle's manipulation. And some of that is true, but not all of it. The room was very quiet. Adrian did not look away from her. I know, he said. I'm not saying this to... She stopped. Found the right words. I'm saying this because I need to understand who you are. The real version. Not the version that emerged from last night, looking like the hero of the story, because last night was complicated, and you were sometimes the hero, and sometimes something else. She kept her voice even, direct. I need to know if this is real, or if it's just what needs to be said right now. The silence stretched. Daniel was looking at his daughter with an expression she couldn't read yet. She didn't know his face well enough to read it, which was a strange, specific grief of its own. Elena was looking at Adrian. Adrian was looking at Sophia. You're right, he said. About which part? All of it, he said. I'm not the hero of last night. I'm a man who did real harm for 20 years who has now decided to stop. Those are different things. He looked at his hands. I told the prosecutor everything. Not the version that protects me. Everything. What happens because of that is what happens. He looked back at her. That's the only version of real I have. Sophia studied him. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. Okay, she said again. That's enough. He looked slightly surprised. You expected more resistance, she asked. I expected you to be angrier, he admitted. I'm 26 years old, she said. I've been working double shifts for 3 years to pay my mother's medical bills. I don't have the energy for anger that doesn't accomplish anything. She picked up her coffee again. I have plenty of energy for watching people do the right thing, though. Even slowly. Even badly. Even when it takes them 20 years to get there. Daniel made a sound that might have been a laugh. Adrian looked at his brother. She's yours, he said. So everyone keeps telling me, Daniel said. The afternoon came fast. The prosecutor's meeting was at 2, and there were hours of preparation between the kitchen table and that room downtown documents, to organize timelines, to verify the careful architectural work of building a case that wouldn't collapse the moment it was examined. Daniel and Adrian left together at 10:30, which was still strange to see these two men, one of whom had been invisible for 25 years, moving through the same space, like they were remembering how to occupy it simultaneously. Sophia watched them go from the window. Marcus stayed. You should sleep, he said, appearing at her elbow. I'm fine. You've been awake for... He checked his watch. 27 hours. Have you slept? 40 minutes in the car. Then we're both fine, she said. Marcus considered this. Fair, he said. She turned from the window. Can I ask you something? You can ask, he said. How long have you worked for Adrian? 14 years. And in those 14 years, she said, how much of what he did you think was right? Marcus was quiet for a moment. The honest kind of quiet. Some of it, he said finally. A lot of it I told myself was necessary. Some of it I knew wasn't and did anyway. He met her gaze directly. That's the honest answer. Are you going to cooperate with the prosecutor too? Yes, he said. I already have. She nodded. Good, she said. He looked at her. You're very direct, he said. Double shifts, she said. No time for anything else. He almost smiled. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. A text from a number she didn't recognize, and then she recognized it because it was the one from the business card. Adrian's number. The one she had called from the street with 2 men behind her. The text said, There's something I should have told you last night. I'll tell you in person. Tonight if you're willing. She stared at it. She typed back, What is it? The response came in less than a minute. The organization's legitimate operations. The construction company, the property holdings. I've already put in motion the process of restructuring them under independent management. But there's one property I'm not restructuring. I'm transferring it directly. She stared at the screen. She typed, to who his response to Daniel. And to you. She read it 3 times. She looked at Marcus. Did you know about this? She said. He mentioned it this morning, Marcus said carefully. Why? Because it was the only part of what he built that he built from scratch, Marcus said. Not inherited, not taken, built over 20 years from nothing. He said, Marcus paused. He said he wanted it to go somewhere it would mean something different. Sophia looked at the phone. She looked at the window. She thought about her mother, who had shown up in a city 25 years ago with nothing but a suitcase and a secret, and had built a life anyway through sheer persistent refusal to give up on the possibility of something better. She thought about her father, who had spent 25 years invisible so that the truth would have someone to carry it. She thought about Adrian, who had spent 20 years becoming the thing he was, and was now in the slow, expensive, necessary process of becoming something else. She thought about 7 words. Just 7 words at the wrong hour of the night to the wrong man. And everything they had opened. She typed back, "We'll talk tonight." She put the phone in her pocket. "Mom," she called. Elena appeared from the back room, which meant she had also not been sleeping. "Yes." "Are you hungry?" Elena blinked. "That's the most normal question anyone has asked me in 24 hours, she said. "I know," Sophia said. "I'm going to make eggs. Sit down." Sophia. "Sit down, Mom. We're going to eat something, and then you're going to sleep for at least 3 hours, and then we're going to figure out the rest of it." She was already moving. "The world is allowed to exist for the next 20 minutes without us solving anything." Elena sat down. Marcus sat down, because apparently nobody was immune to the specific authority of a woman who had decided someone was going to eat. Sophia made eggs. It was a strange, ordinary, necessary thing to do at 11 in the morning after the longest night of her life, and she did it with the full attention of someone who understood on a level below thought that the ordinary things were not less important than the extraordinary ones. Sometimes they were more. She put food in front of her mother and food in front of Marcus, and sat down with her own plate, and for 20 minutes they ate, and the world did in fact continue to exist without anyone solving anything. It was the most useful thing she had done since the whole thing started. By 2 o'clock, Daniel and Adrian were in the prosecutor's office. By 3, Carmine's attorney had filed paperwork that the prosecutor described in a text to Marcus as optimistic to the point of delusion. By 4, 2 more of Carmine's associates had been taken in for questioning. By 5, Daniel called from the meeting to say it was going better than expected, which meant the documentation was solid, and the prosecutor was experienced enough to know what she was looking at when it was laid in front of her. By 6, Sophia had slept for 2 hours and woken up feeling like a person again, instead of a collection of adrenaline and borrowed time. Elena had slept 4 hours and woken up sharp, the sharpest she had been in months, which the doctor had told them. Sometimes happened these windows of clarity that opened unexpectedly and let the person inside be fully present for a little while. They were both awake and sitting in the main room when the 2 brothers came back at 6:45. They looked tired. They also looked like they had been in a room together for 6 hours, working toward the same thing which had changed something between them, not fixed it. Nothing as sudden as fixing, but shifted it. The specific shift of people who have discovered they can function alongside each other even after everything. Daniel went straight to Elena. He sat down across from her. He put both hands on the table between them. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she said. 25 years, 1 syllable. She reached out and covered his hands with hers. Sophia watched from the other side of the room and thought, this is what it looks like when something survives that shouldn't have had to survive this hard. She looked at Adrian, who was standing near the wall, doing the thing he did when he needed a moment, not quite leaning, not quite standing, occupying his own space at the edge of everyone else's. She crossed to him. He looked at her. "How did it go?" she said. "Better than I deserved," he said. "Stop that," she said. He blinked. "Stop doing the..." She made a gesture that encompassed his general self-flagellating posture. "You did the right thing today. You can acknowledge that without undermining it." "It was the minimum required right thing," he said. "It was a start," she said. "Starts count." He looked at her. "You said that yesterday too," he said. "I say it a lot," she said. Occupational hazard. Double shift workers understand the value of starting. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The property transfer. You got my text." "I got it. I meant it." "I know you meant it," she said. "We'll talk about it." She paused. "It's a complicated gift, Adrian." "I know." It comes with a lot of complicated history. I know that too. And I'm not. She stopped. I'm not going to make a decision about something that significant in the 24th hour of the longest night of my life. I need time. Daniel needs time. There are 100 things to figure out before we get to that. I know, he said again. I'm not asking for a decision. I'm asking for... He searched for the right word. A possibility. She looked at him. The man who had walked into a restaurant looking for silence and had found something louder than anything he had ever dealt with. The man who had held a ring on his finger for 20 years, like a wound he didn't know was a door. The man who was right now in the middle of dismantling his own empire piece by piece, because the alternative was pretending the past 20 years had been something other than what they were. A possibility, she said. Yes. You're going to be in legal proceedings for a while, she said. Yes. And restructuring the organization. Yes. And figuring out how to be a person who has a brother again. Yes. That's a lot, she said. It is, he agreed. And somewhere in the middle of all that, she said, you want a possibility. With a waitress who started this whole thing by not keeping her mouth shut. With the woman, Adrian said carefully, who walked into a building in the dark, holding 25 years of evidence, and didn't blink. Sophia looked at him for a long moment. I still have a shift on Thursday, she said. I know, he said. I'm not going to give up my shift. I'm not asking you to give up anything, he said. She looked at his face, at the exhaustion in it, and the relief underneath the exhaustion, and underneath that something quieter and more tentative than anything she had seen from him all night. The specific expression of someone who is trying to want something without knowing if they're allowed to. Okay, she said. Okay. A possibility, she said. That's what you asked for. He nodded. That's what you get, she said. The small controlled exhale he made told her more than anything he had said all night. In the corner of the room, Daniel said something quiet to Elena that made her laugh. The sound of it moved through the room like something let out after a long time inside. Marcus, who had been standing by the door all day, sat down for the first time. Outside, the city was doing its early evening business, people going home, restaurants, filling up the ordinary, beautiful machinery of ordinary life. Inside, 6 people who had been strangers 24 hours ago sat in a room and breathed in the specific air of something that had been broken for a very long time, beginning slowly and imperfectly, and without any guarantee of clean resolution to be put back together. Adrian reached into his pocket. He placed something on the table between him and Sophia. The business card. The one with just the phone number on it. The one he had left on a diner table for a $4 coffee. She looked at it. She looked at him. You can throw it away now, he said. You have the actual number. She picked up the card. She turned it over. She put it in her own pocket. I'll keep it, she said. He looked slightly confused. Why? She thought about 7 words. About what they had opened. About rings and secrets and brothers and fathers and the whole enormous weight of a truth that had been patient enough to wait 25 years for the right moment. Because, she said, it's where this started. And that for now was enough. It was more than enough. It was in the quiet, honest accounting of a night that had rewritten everything exactly what it needed to be. The city moved outside. The evening held, and somewhere across town, in a federal building that was working its way through a case that would take the better part of 2 years to fully resolve, the first real crack in 25 years of carefully constructed darkness, was letting in a light that had no intention of being shut out again. It was not a clean ending. It was not a simple one. But it was real. And real as any waitress working double shifts at 2 in the morning will tell you is worth considerably more than simple. 6 months later, the city was still talking about Carmine Moretti. Not the way it used to talk about the Moretti name, with the lowered voice, and the sideways glance, the specific, careful silence of people who understood that certain names were better discussed in private. Now it talked about Carmine, the way it talked about all fallen powerful men, loudly, publicly in courtrooms and newspapers, and the kind of television coverage that turned 25 years of deliberate damage into a 2-minute segment between commercials. The trial had started in March. It was moving faster than anyone expected, which the prosecutor attributed to the quality of the documentation and the completeness of the cooperation she had received. What she did not say publicly, but what was understood by everyone in the room when she said it was that the cooperation had come from two directions simultaneously: a brother who had been building a case from the outside for 15 years, and a brother who had handed over the inside from the moment the truth became undeniable. Together, those two directions had built something that Carmine's lawyers were discovering could not be dismantled. Sophia read the coverage the way she read most things, directly without flinching, and then she set it down and went back to whatever she had been doing before, because the story in the newspaper was only the outer edge of the actual thing, and she had been living inside the actual thing for 6 months. She knew what it looked like from the inside. She also knew it was not a story. It was still happening. She was sitting at the kitchen table in the apartment she had moved into 3 months ago, larger than the old one, not extravagant, just large enough that Elena had her own room with a window that got morning light and a closet that fit all her things when her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Adrian. She picked up. "Good morning," she said. "Morning." His voice was the same as it always was in the mornings, direct, focused, with the particular quality of a man who had already been awake for 2 hours before most people opened their eyes. "How's Elena?" "Good day," Sophia said. She remembered the name of the street we grew up on this morning without being prompted. We had coffee on the fire escape. "That's good," he said, and he meant it in the specific way he always meant things, completely without decoration. She had learned to read him over 6 months. She had learned that his directness was not coldness, that his silences were not absence, that the man who could walk into a room and command it without raising his voice was also the man who remembered that her mother took her tea with 1 sugar, not 2, and had corrected the detail quietly the one time someone got it wrong. She had learned other things too. She had learned that building towards something better, when you were doing it from the ruins of something that had taken 20 years to construct, was not a fast or comfortable process. She had learned that Adrian was keeping every promise he had made in that kitchen at 3 in the morning. Not cleanly, not easily, but with the grinding, persistent commitment of someone who had decided that this was the thing he was going to do, and he was going to do it correctly. "Meeting today?" she asked. 2 o'clock, he said. "The construction company audit finishes this week. The lawyers think we can complete the transition to independent management by the end of the month." "That's 3 months ahead of schedule," she said. "Marcus has been pushing the timeline," Adrian said. "I think he's enjoying the legitimate side of things more than he expected." "Marcus is enjoying having something to optimize," Sophia said. "He'd reorganize the seasons if you let him." Adrian made a sound that was his version of a laugh, short, reel, arrived at without warning. She liked that sound. She had liked it the first time she heard it, which had surprised her, and she had liked it every time since, which had stopped surprising her about 2 months ago. "There's something I want to talk to you about," he said. "Not on the phone." "Tonight," she said, "if you're free. I have a shift until 8. "After 8 then." She paused. In the 6 months since the night at Carmela's Italian kitchen, she had kept her shift on Thursday. She had kept all her shifts actually for the first 2 months, not because she needed the money in the same desperate way anymore, but because Rosario had covered for her the night everything happened, and she owed him, and because the restaurant was familiar in a way that felt important to hold on to when everything else was changing shape so fast. She had given notice last month. 2 more weeks, and then she was done. It was the right decision, and she knew it, and it also felt like the end of something she hadn't expected to miss, which was the specific bittersweet quality of moving forward. When moving forward meant leaving something behind. "After 8, she said. "Come here, I'll make food." "You don't have to make food." "I like making food," she said. "Come at 8:30, it'll be ready." A pause. "Okay," he said. She hung up. She sat for a moment with the phone in her hand, and the morning coming through the window, and her mother somewhere in the back of the apartment, doing whatever Elena did in the mornings that she never quite explained. She had a routine, private and complete, that she had maintained through 25 years of hiding and 2 years of cognitive fog, and apparently intended to maintain regardless of circumstances. "Was that Adrian?" Elena called from the hallway. Yes. He's coming tonight. 8:30. A pause. I'll make myself scarce, Elena said. You don't have to do that. I want to, Elena said, appearing in the kitchen doorway in her robe with her tea, looking clearer-eyed than she had in months. The doctor said the new medication was working. The doctors also said that stress relief and stability had measurable effects on cognitive progression, which was the clinical way of saying that a woman who no longer had to carry a 25-year secret alone in a house with locked windows was doing better. You two need space to have actual conversations that I'm not sitting in the middle of. We have conversations, Sophia said. You have careful, considerate, extremely adult conversations about logistics and timelines and legal proceedings, Elena said. That's not the same thing. Sophia looked at her mother. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting nothing, Elena said with the specific serenity of a woman who had decided she had earned the right to be both entirely honest and entirely unconcerned about whether that was comfortable. I'm simply making myself scarce this evening. She poured her tea and went back to the hallway. Sophia looked at the window. She thought about Adrian's voice on the phone. There's something I want to talk to you about. Not on the phone. She had learned to read him over 6 months. She knew the difference between the voice he used for legal updates and organizational transitions and the voice he used for the other things, the quieter things, the things that didn't have meeting times attached to them. This morning he had used the second voice. She picked up her coffee. She thought, all right then. She went to work. The last 2 hours of her last ever Thursday shift passed. The way all final shifts passed faster than expected, loaded with the particular emotional weight of things you hadn't known you would miss until the ending was visible. Rosario shook her hand at the end. He was not a sentimental man, and so he did it briskly and professionally, and then he gave her an envelope with a card signed by the whole kitchen staff and told her she had been the best double-shift worker he had ever scheduled because she never complained, not once, and Sophia had to look at the ceiling for a moment to make sure her face didn't do anything she would regret. Come back and eat sometime, he said. Don't be a stranger. I won't, she said. She meant it. She walked out at 8:10 with her apron in her bag for the last time and stood on the sidewalk outside Carmela's Italian kitchen and let herself feel the full weight of it for exactly 30 seconds. The 3 years of double shifts, the medical bills, the $6 personal checking account balance. The exhaustion that had become so familiar, it had started to feel like a personality trait. She let herself feel all of it. And then she let it go. Not because it hadn't mattered. Because it had mattered completely, and it was done, and something else was starting, and honoring the thing that was ending was exactly how you made space for what came next. She walked home. Adrian was already there when she arrived at 8:25, which meant he had been early and had waited in the hallway rather than call her, which was a thing she had also learned about him. He was early to everything, and he waited without complaint, and he never made lateness someone else's problem. She unlocked the door. He followed her in. Elena, he said. Out, Sophia said. She's at Daniel's. A pause. Daniel's cooking, he said. Daniel is attempting to cook, Sophia said. Elena is supervising. She says he's enthusiastic but dangerously optimistic about cooking times. She heard the sound again, the short, real, unguarded one. She went to the kitchen. He sat at the table, which he did in the specific way of a man who was accustomed to standing at the head of things, and was still learning how to sit down in a space that wasn't his and feel like he belonged there. He was getting better at it. 6 months ago, he had sat like he was ready to leave at any moment. Now he sat like he was staying for a while and had decided that was acceptable. Growth, Sophia thought. Slow and real and unmistakable. She put food on the stove. How was the prosecutor meeting? She said. Good, he said. They're moving toward sentencing recommendations, 6 to 8 years the way things are looking. She kept her back to him. How do you feel about that? She said. A pause. Complicated, he said. He's still your uncle, she said. He killed my father, Adrian said. He also raised you, she said. She turned around. He was looking at the table. Both of those things are true, she said. You don't have to feel one thing about a person who did both of those things. You're allowed to feel 6 things simultaneously and not resolve any of them neatly. He looked up. Is that what you do? He said. With most things, she said. What 6 things are you feeling right now? She turned back to the stove. Ask me after dinner, she said. They ate. It was a comfortable thing, which was still occasionally surprising, the ease of it, the way a meal could just be a meal even when the people having it were in the middle of something as large and complicated as what they were in the middle of. She had made pasta. Nothing elaborate. The kind of thing you made because you were tired, and it was 8:30, and the food was supposed to be the least dramatic part of the evening. When the plates were empty, she refilled his coffee and sat back down. You said there was something you wanted to talk about, she said. He nodded. He reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the table. Not a ring. A key. A single key on a plain ring, the kind that opened a door. She looked at it. The Callaway property, he said. She looked at him. I had it surveyed last month, he said. The building is structurally sound. The land is clean. With the right work it could be... He stopped. Chose his words with the specific care of a man who had spent months learning to say things the right way instead of the efficient way. It's a real property. It could be a real place, for real people. She looked at the key. What kind of real place? She said. That's not my decision, he said. It's yours and Daniel's. He pushed the key slightly closer to her. I told you 6 months ago I was transferring it. I'm transferring it. What it becomes, that's yours. She looked at the key. She thought about her father who had buried documents under the floor of that building, because it was the safest place he knew, which meant in some strange way that the truth of everything had been living there all along underground waiting. She thought about her mother, who had kept a ring in a shoebox for 25 years because someone had asked her to carry something important, and she had simply never stopped. She thought about a property her grandfather had bought in 1962 under a name nobody remembered, which had spent 60 years belonging to no one and no particular purpose, waiting with the patient indifference of land for someone to decide what it was for. A community organization, she said. He looked at her. There are people who are inside your organization, she said carefully. Legitimate workers, employees of the construction company, the property management, the financial services side. Real people with real jobs who are now in the middle of a transition they didn't create and didn't choose. She met his eyes. Some of them need resources. Job placement, legal help, support for families affected by all of this. She paused. The Callaway property is large enough, and it's off the books, which means it's clean. No history attached to it except the one we give it. Adrian was very still. You've been thinking about this, he said. Since you sent that text 6 months ago, she said. Yes. He looked at the key on the table. He looked at her. Daniel will want to be involved, she said. Good, he said immediately. And it will take time, and money, and a lot of people doing things that don't benefit them directly. I have time, he said. I have money. I know people. Complicated people, she said. Most useful people are, he said. She picked up the key. It was heavier than it looked. Not literally, but the weight of what it represented: 60 years of waiting, 25 years of buried truth, 6 months of careful, painful, necessary reconstruction. That weight was real, and she felt it in her hand, and she let herself feel it fully before she closed her fingers around it. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. Okay, she said. We'll do it. He nodded once, and then, because he was still learning, and because some things only got easier with practice, he said, There's something else. She looked at him. He was looking at the table. Adrian, she said. He looked at her. Just say it, she said. Whatever it is. You have been carefully, considerately, extremely adulting around the edges of something for 6 months, and I am right here. And I have known you since 2 a.m. on the worst and best night of my life, and you can just say it. I was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I don't know how to do this. Do what? This, he said, and the word contained everything he wasn't saying. The dinner, the key, the 6 months of showing up. The mornings calling to ask about Elena. The careful distance he had kept, because he thought it was respectful, and the distance that had become its own kind of statement. "You're doing it," she said. "I'm doing it badly," he said. "You're doing it," she said again. "That's the part that counts." He looked at her. "I don't have a clean record," he said. "I don't have a clean past. I can't offer you." He stopped. "There are consequences still coming. Legal ones, financial ones, things that aren't resolved and won't be for a long time." "I know," she said. "And you're 26. I know how old I am. And you're a person," she said, "who is doing the right thing slowly and imperfectly, and with a lot of legal oversight, and who calls my mother by her first name, and remembers she takes 1 sugar, not 2, and who sat on the floor of a stranger's kitchen in the middle of the night and touched the edge of a ring like it might disappear." She held his gaze. "That's what I know. The rest is details." He was quiet. "The rest is significant details," he said. "Yes," she said. "And I'm not pretending otherwise. We're not pretending anything. That's the whole point." She paused. "But I picked up the phone when you called this morning. I made dinner. I'm sitting across from you right now." She put her hand on the table between them, not reaching for him, just placing it there open. "I've been telling you yes for 6 months, in every way except the exact words." He looked at her hand. He looked at her face. He put his hand over hers. Not the way he had touched the ring, tentatively afraid it would disappear. This time with the full weight of a decision. "Sophia," he said. "Yes," she said. "I'm going to get this wrong sometimes," he said. I don't have a template for this. I have 20 years of being something I'm dismantling, and I don't have the replacement fully built yet." "Nobody has the replacement fully built," she said. "That's not how people work." "You seem fairly complete," he said. "I have 26 years of medical bills and double shifts and a mother I've been terrified of losing," she said. "I'm a full catastrophe. I just dress it neatly." He made the sound again. The real one. She felt the specific satisfaction of that, of making a man who had spent 20 years learning to be unreachable, arrive at something unguarded. "Okay," he said. "Okay," she said. His hand was warm over hers. Outside the city, did what it always did, moved, breathed, carried its millions of ordinary lives through the ordinary machinery of an ordinary Thursday night. Somewhere across town, Daniel Moretti was overcooking something in his kitchen while Elena supervised with the patient authority of a woman who had been competent at all domestic things for 25 years and was not going to pretend otherwise. Somewhere in a federal building, a case that had already consumed 6 months was quietly, steadily building toward the conclusion that Carmine Moretti had tried for 25 years to prevent. Somewhere in a property that had been waiting since 1962 for someone to decide what it was for the floors and walls held the particular stillness of a place about to become something. Here in this apartment, 2 people sat at a kitchen table with their hands together, and the city moving outside, and everything still unresolved, and everything still possible, and the specific, quiet, real feeling of something beginning that intended to last. 3 weeks later, Sophia and Daniel met at the Callaway property for the first time together. They walked through it side by side. Daniel was quiet for most of it, taking it in with the focused attention of a man who had spent 25 years learning to understand spaces quickly and completely. Sophia watched him look at the floor in the northeast corner. He stood over it for a long moment. "That's where," she started. "Yes," he said. She stood beside him. They looked at the floor together. "It's a good building," he said finally. "It needs work," she said. "Most things worth having do," he said. She looked at her father. 6 months. In this was still a new and careful thing, learning his rhythms, his silences, the particular way he approached problems from the side, rather than directly, which was so much like the way she approached things that Elena had pointed it out twice, and both times it had startled Sophia before it settled into something warm. "I have a name," she said. He looked at her. "For the organization," she said. "If you like it." "Tell me." She told him. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said yes, Simple as that. The way the right things always felt, not complicated, not loud. Just right. Adrian came by the property that evening. He walked through it the way he walked through all spaces, quietly, efficiently, with the eye of someone who understood construction, because he had spent 20 years building things, and now understood it differently, because he was spending this year taking them apart correctly. He listened while Daniel and Sophia outlined the plan. He asked 3 questions. He said, "What do you need from me?" Daniel said, "Money and connections," and then stepped back. Adrian nodded. "Done," he said. "That's it," Sophia said. "That's it," he said. "It's your project. I fund it. I stay out of the way." He looked at her. "That was always the plan." She looked at him. "You're better at stepping back than you think," she said. "I'm learning," he said. Daniel, who had been listening to this exchange with the expression of a man watching something he had hoped for but not assumed, turned toward the window and gave them 30 seconds of privacy, the only way he could in an empty building. "Thank you," Sophia said quietly. "You thanked me for the safe house," Adrian said. "And the car, and the documents. You don't have to keep thanking me." "I thank people when they deserve it," she said. "Get used to it." He looked at her. "I'm working on it," he said. She believed him. She believed him because she had watched him work on everything else with the same slow, honest, grinding commitment, and because a man who kept his promises in the hard cases could be trusted to keep them in the quiet ones too. 2 months after that, on a Tuesday morning in November, almost exactly a year from the night a tired waitress had said 7 words to a stranger in a corner booth. Sophia stood in Carmela's Italian kitchen for the first time since she had turned in her apron. She ordered coffee. Black, no sugar. She sat in the corner booth, the one with the back to the wall and the sight line to every exit, and she looked at the table and she thought about the man who had sat here looking for silence and found something considerably larger. She thought about a ring catching the light. She thought about the choice she had made without thinking the 7 words that had come up before her brain could stop them. She thought about what those 7 words had done. She put her hand flat on the table. Outside, the city moved through its ordinary Tuesday business, indifferent and enormous, and completely unaware that it was the anniversary of something. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Elena just beat me at cards. 3rd time this week. I think she's been hustling me." She smiled. Another text from Adrian. "The first staff hire for the organization starts Monday. Daniel vetted her. Elena apparently also vetted her. I was informed after the fact." She laughed out loud. The 2 old men at the counter looked at her. She didn't mind. She typed back to Adrian. "Get used to it. You funded a matriarchy." His response came in 40 seconds. "I can think of worse things to fund." She set the phone down. She picked up the coffee cup. She looked at the ring on her right hand. Not the Moretti ring, not the silver one with the family crest, but a simple band that had been her grandmother's, and that Elena had given her the week they moved into the new apartment, pressing it into her hand and saying, "You should have something that was always yours." She turned it once on her finger. She thought about all the things that had been waiting. The property, the truth, the brother, the father, the man in the corner booth. All of it waiting in the specific patient way of things that are true. Not urgent, not loud, not insisting, just real, just present, just existing, until the moment someone was ready to see them. She had been ready. She had not known she was ready, which was, she thought, probably the only way readiness actually worked. You never knew until you opened your mouth. She finished her coffee. She left a 20 on the table for a $4 coffee, which was a habit she had apparently inherited from a man she had only known for a year and would spend the rest of her life learning. She walked out. The November air hit her the same way it had a year ago, cold with teeth, the specific cold of a city that was already thinking about winter. She pulled her coat tight. She thought, "A year ago I was exhausted and broke and terrified of losing my mother and completely unaware that the quiet man in the corner booth was about to change everything." She thought, and then I opened my mouth. She thought, and everything changed. She walked. The city moved around her, enormous, indifferent, carrying its millions of ordinary lives through the ordinary machinery of an ordinary Tuesday morning. She was not ordinary. She had never been ordinary, though she had spent 26 years in the costume of ordinary, because extraordinary had felt like something that happened to other people. She knew better now. Extraordinary was not something that happened to you. It was something you chose in the small, reckless, honest moments, when you said the true thing instead of the safe thing, when you picked up the phone instead of letting it ring, when you walked toward the building in the dark instead of away from it, when you kept the business card because it was where this started. It was something you chose every day in small ways, until one day you looked up and understood that the life around you had become something you never could have planned, but would never for anything give back. Sophia Bennett walked through the city on a Tuesday morning in November, with her grandmother's ring on her hand, and her father's eyes in her face, and her mother's stubbornness in her spine, and the memory of a man's voice saying her name like it contained everything he had been waiting to give her. She walked toward the Calloway property, toward the work that was just beginning, toward the family that had been broken and buried and patient, and was now slowly and imperfectly, and with an enormous amount of legal oversight, becoming whole. She walked with the particular steadiness of someone who had been through the worst of something and come out knowing that the worst had not been the end, it had been the door. And she had opened it. 7 words at 2 a.m. in a corner booth. 7 words that had unburied a truth, reunited a family, dismantled an empire, and built the beginning of something better in its place. 7 words that had given a man back his brother, a woman back her voice, a daughter back her father, and a city one fewer reason to be afraid. Some sentences don't just start conversations. Some sentences open everything. And the woman who had spoken those 7 words walked forward into the morning and did not look back because everything worth looking at was already ahead of her, waiting the way. All real things waited patiently, completely, and without any doubt that she was coming.